I had a dilemma at some point in my consciousness and awakening and my wanting to assist the Black nation in going back home, my own family, of which I've written a family tree. I tried to engage the elders and I was like, look, because you guys haven't built the type of structures that can compete globally, maybe I can try and assist with my little exposure and whiteness. Then I was like, okay, then we look at our core beliefs. Let's say being Christian as an example, and then being Zulu. And then you look at the damage to the Zulu brand and the Zulu nation. And I spoke to the advisor to the king at the time, Uzwelithini. And I asked him questions like, what would it take for me to dethrone the king and to take over and to try and build it into what I think it should be? And in those conversations and in the back and forth, I came up with this dilemma of, should I spend the rest of my life trying to colonize the Zulu kingdom because I believe I can offer a better template? Or should I build my own thing? Now, my own thing's going to take much longer. It doesn't have a legacy. People won't buy in. It'll be resistant, but it'll be authentic. I ended up going with the latter, by the way. So I've got my own belief system of Penuelism, and I'm hoping at some point it will be a culture, etc. But this is coming out now because of what you're saying. My question to you, I guess, is, do you do Tyler Perry? Do you go to Moja Love and do Yajola 99? Do you do trash TV? And you're like, Jesus Christ was my role model and he spent time with pimps and hoes. I'm going to get into the darkest places because that's where the saving needs to be done. Or this place is so tainted, I might add to the fuel. I'm going to start my little spaza shop and I don't care if there's only 5 people. My integrity will at least be intact.
So I'm comfortable with the latter. I think it's a choice that I've made many, many years ago.
Sure.
That even in spaces of not getting a lot of attention, not being the space that everybody flocks to, I think for me, there's a comfortability in that is also that it doesn't create commercial stress in that now we really need to keep this up. We need to get the same type of viewership. We need to have the same numbers. We mustn't lose sponsors. Because I feel that that's what drives a lot of the conversations you alluded to first, that we now need to please sponsors. We need to now think about what is the trend and we need to jump on it. Whether we agree with it or not, we just need to be there. And I just feel that's also a form of enslavement, to kind of just be drawn in directions that you may not want to go. I don't want to go there. I understand that there's a need for others. Did you ever have the dilemma? No.
You've never had it? You always
I've never had it.
I'd rather walk this niche
path.
Always.
Always. In the 30 years that I have been employable, only 3 of those years were tied to a paycheck.
Okay.
Meaning an informal employment. And even within that employment, I had a lot of freedom. So I don't really know what it means, and I'm scared of it. And I understand that it's a luxury to be able to find some form of income doing what I love and what I'm passionate about. But I'm so tied to it that it's very difficult for me to think about doing it differently. But I'm very aware that the time may come where I don't no longer have that freedom. But I haven't, that has not been my dominant experience, that I have to please or that I have to do because otherwise I can't eat.
You're a wild animal. You're unemployable. You're almost untainted, except for 3 years.
Except for 3 years.
Are you aware of that privilege? Are you fully aware of it?
Very.
Even when you engage ordinary people that are contained, when they speak about my bills, but my children's medical aid,
I do. I do. Because this has not been something I chose because it's been easy financially or money has just come or that. It's not been like that. It's been a struggle all along. Sure. And it's a struggle that I'm accepting. So I spend very little time. And I think this is why even through our company, Ebukhosini Solutions, we spend very little time complaining about what we could have and what we should have and what would be just. And that leads many people to think these people don't have financial problems. Because the thing is, I don't know, it doesn't empower me to divulge and just share how difficult it is to survive financially. This also comes with a lot of blessings in my relationship, within my family life, within the freedom that I wake up to every day. And yes, there are challenges, there are problems, there are things, but I'm also with a partner who understands that equally, and we find solutions together.
How did you get that right? Getting a partner that understands?
I think there's a lot of blessings involved in that, and a lot of hard prayers and patience. I think
prayers.
Yeah, prayers in the sense of working on myself. I think prayer is not about asking the Creator to just present things that I want.
Okay.
It's about committing to work harder and become better and use more of what I've already been given, but I may be lazy to really bring out. So prayer for me is to boost yourself, is to take responsibility and not just say that I wish I had X and Y, but I need to work harder to get that or to be that.
Are you saying you pray internally and not externally?
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yes.
I don't pray to ask there. I'm praying to ask here.
Just like Penuel, I'm also a God.
Ark.
And that means God is within. God is within. That doesn't mean I don't believe there are forces and energies and souls and everything out there, but my primary prayer is internal.
Yeah.
For me to be better. And I think that led me onto a path where when me and my partner met, we could identify that there's a queen, there's a king in each other.
That's scary for the Black nation speaking like that.
In what way?
My wife is a queen and she identified a king. People almost feel, what do you mean? There's a fear. There's almost a fear of embracing greatness because we haven't had it for so long. You never had to do so you speak about praying, you speak about blessings. In your upbringing, you've never had to do internal work on yourself where there was doubt, inferiority.
All the time. I come from being reminded about my nothingness. I come from living with hopes and fantasies, but facing a reality that tells me, stop dreaming. What are you thinking? How are you going to get that?
Yeah.
But also being willing to combat it and not subdue myself to the doubt that it's probably not going to happen. Yeah. I've lived with a lot of hopes, things that have sounded crazy to people around me, but I've also become a person who don't talk a lot about things until they are emerging.
Okay.
I'm not the person who say, one day I'm going to build this, I'm going to do that, and then just for traction or because it sounds good.
Yeah.
I'd rather take the humble route and say, I'm working on something, I'll see what it becomes. Inside, I have a lot of wild dreams but I also understand that the dreams are not just going to manifest because they are nice dreams.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of hard work.
Yes.
And it takes sacrifice, it takes critique, it takes walking alone. So the internal work has very much for me meant that I am agreeing to walk alone, at least in many sub-paths of my journey.
Yeah. So I guess we have to start officially. Dr. Baba Buntu. You said you're comfortable with me calling you Baba Buntu or just Buntu. Welcome to the Penuel Show.
Thank you so much.
You and I sat, and I'm sorry to leak this here, but it's important to leak it because it was never leaked before. You and I sat with DJ Sbu, I think it may have been last year, if not the year before.
The year before.
We had an amazing conversation.
Agreed.
And I think one of the things people don't understand about this work we do is life happens. A memory card gets damaged, audio goes away, and we lost probably one of the most special conversations we could have had. And it's broken my heart since because you've been traveling a lot since then. So we couldn't sit down until now. I'm very honored and blessed to host you. This has also been a couple of weeks in the making because of logistics.
Back and forth, yes.
But I guess for people that believe in the universe and timing, I think it needed to happen today. If you may, maybe share where you were born, a bit about your upbringing, how we end up with Ebukhosini Solutions.
No, thank you so much, Penuel, and it's a great honor to be on your platform.
Yeah.
We met as we were both invited to a place to talk about Inhlaulo.
Yeah. That was for SAPC.
Yes, and it was very interesting having. I think I had a conversation that is not so regular when we sat and waited to be called into the studio and everything and I identified a person who's also on a path of self-discovery and bringing things into existence. So thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you.
So I am from an African Caribbean family in one of the smallest islands in the world called Anguilla. Which basically is a village with 30 beaches.
30 beaches?
Beaches.
Ooh.
And I need to say that word slowly so that it doesn't sound like anything else.
But that sounds cool.
It is cool. It's called the Island of Tranquility. So it's very relaxed and laid back. But it's also, its financial capacity lies in tourism, but Anguilla has, fortunately, other than many other Caribbean destinations, chosen to specialize in luxury tourism. So this is where Beyonce and Jay-Z went for their engagement, apparently.
And that was your home.
This is where Janet Jackson goes. People of note who don't want to be seen, who don't want to be out in public, they find resorts there. And that sounds like a very lavish space. And it is in part for those who go there with that type of money. Yeah. But other than that, I'm using the word village because it really is. When my wife, Mama Tebogo, who's from Mahogwe in Mahikeng, when I met her and I said, and I went to Mahogwe and I said, this looks exactly like Anguilla. She's like, come on, I've seen the Caribbean on pictures. It doesn't look like this. You're just saying this to, what are you trying to scheme here? Yeah. And then she came to Anguilla and said, you were not lying. Yeah. So it's a very laid back space. It's very marked by both its colonial past and its intense Christianity. But it's also one of the areas that, it's still a colony actually. It's called a British, what is it called? A British Protectorate. That's what it's called. So it's under the British Crown.
A lot of people don't know the Caribbean. If you can give us just visually on the map.
Yes.
Where are we?
So it's a belt of islands between North America and South America.
Between North America and South America.
Yeah.
Below Abo, Mexico and them.
So
somewhere there.
Between North and South, you would have to, when you look directly at the map, you would have to go right along the islands of Jamaica, Puerto Rico, and then go to the eastern corner of those islands. Anguilla is in that corner.
How far is Jamaica from you guys?
I wouldn't know in terms of miles or kilometers, but it's in the region.
Okay.
So it's obviously for many it's a holiday destination, and it's attached to what reggae means to some people, what Rastafari means to some people. But I think what many do not always appreciate or know enough is that the African diaspora in the Caribbean is quite different than the one we often get to know more about in North America. And maybe also closer, at least to some extent, to our African roots. Yes. Both in awareness, but also in terms of spirituality to some extent. I walked a path to join Ifa, which is a Yoruba-linked spiritual system that exists a lot also in the African
Yoruba from Nigeria.
From Nigeria.
Okay.
Which also exists in many corners of the African diaspora, especially in Brazil and the Caribbean.
Okay.
And a lot of people may not know so much about that connection to Africa, because the picture often is that people in the diaspora are very de-linked and very de-rooted from Africa, which is not necessarily the case. My family, or my parents and their siblings, are from a generation, because Anguilla was one of those islands where there was very little to do and very little produced. It was really a castaway even from the colonialists. They just used it to dump people they didn't like, and it was not a place that they held in high esteem at all.
You have to say that again, sorry. So, some of these islands in the Caribbean were places where colonialists would fetch slaves, for whatever reason not like them, find them undesirable, and go dump them on these far-flung islands.
That, but even between themselves, when they had people within their own community, British people, French people, who maybe opposed whatever the rule was at that time or did something they didn't like, this was a place that they say, go and live there. Like, we don't want you where we are setting up the serious fort. So it was a dumping place, both for the white people that colonialists didn't like and for black people in many different ways. Yeah. The tracing of Anguilla goes back to Senegal, Sierra Leone, and I've traced myself back to Yoruba land.
Part of Nigeria?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is also important for me to say, in the sense of when I talk about being a Pan-Africanist, it's not just an ideological rooting. It also has to do with the journey that I've been allowed to walk within the global Africa. Yeah. But first things first, so during the 60s, I was born in 67. Yeah. My parents and their siblings belonged to a generation that really was seeking to get out, because there wasn't much to do in terms of studies and finding a profession. So some moved to America, some moved to Europe. I ended up being born in Norway, Scandinavia.
Norway?
Yes.
You were born in Norway?
I was born
Your family's from Anguilla, but you were born in Norway?
That's right.
You've got Norwegian
I've got Norwegian passport. I can speak Norwegian.
Oh,
I'm not going to say anything in Norwegian right now, but
speak Norwegian. Just tell us something there first.
And that chapter of my life, I think that there are chapters about my family life that I'm not so interested in talking about on this platform. And that's not because I have a lot of secrets, but it exposes people that I don't find it very important to say so much about here. Okay. But I think what is important to say as a foundation to my journey is that life in Norway was a very harsh experience with outsidedness, exclusion, and loneliness.
Yeah.
Over the years, a growing African community has taken place in Norway as well. And I have been fortunate to be able to find ways of working within that community.
Yeah.
So I think part of my portfolio is also that I started out my African-centered work in Norway, which is quite...
No one would ever imagine black people in Norway.
Funny story, I was there to be the festival director for an African History Month festival, and contacted Molefi Asante, which you may know. He's quite a prolific writer and scholar within the Pan-African world, but based in the States. Yeah. And he got our invitation. He's like, he thought it was a plot. This is my last day. I'm being taken out.
Yeah. It does not make sense at all. Imagine being invited for like an African month celebration in Denmark or Sweden. You're like,
that's right.
Nope, this is a scam.
Exactly.
Not going.
Exactly. But fortunately, he came and we had a great time. But I think, so Norway has changed. I mean, I have visited in between. But I think when I left Norway, so I spent my childhood in Norway and was very marked by that in terms of internal blisters and trauma in so many different ways. But I also had this strong conviction that I'm going to get out of this. I'm going to just do more than survive it. I'm going to use this to build myself. Yeah. And I remember having this strange fight with a small white boy when I was maybe 12.
Yeah.
And I remember, so I don't remember what we were fighting about, but I think it came to almost a physical fight. And then out of nowhere, I'm saying, at least I'm going to travel. And I'm like, what did that even mean? And I think he didn't know even how to respond to that, because nobody says that. You say that I'm going to be richer, I'm going to have a bigger car or something like that. I'm going to travel. Like, what is that? Yeah. And it's interesting because I think deep in my soul there's always been this vision that I'm not bound to just one physical space. Yeah. South Africa is the space I've lived at longest in the same space. I came to South Africa in 93, 30 years ago.
Okay. Just before 94.
Just before 94, yeah. A year with extreme violence. I stayed in Orlando, Soweto. And South Africa did something to me that I think it's difficult for me to even explain now. But it did something. I can't say it welcomed me because it wasn't a soft, nice welcome. Yeah. It probably challenged me more than anything, because I came to South Africa to feel home. Yeah. I was studying social work at the time, and I was here to do the practice, and I was going to be inspired using African philosophy. Here we don't use European thought. We don't consult Western scholars. That's what I was here for, and nothing of that sort at all. And I was seen as such a troublemaker for even always presenting this, putting this on the table. Couldn't we find an African angle to this? What's an African version we could? I was always bringing up this question. People were so sick and tired. Like, we're trying to get free here. This is the year before 94.
Our first democratic elections.
Exactly. Yeah. We want to be more like Europe. What are you talking about Africa for? Yeah. There was a lot of those sentiments in my conversations. And I did frequent my time with people within the Pan-African space, AZAPO, PAC, some of the revolutionary elements of ANC. But there was very much a Western dominant leaning, which I found very disturbing. Yeah. So I was very disappointed over that. Of course, I met young people who were searching and questioning and all of that. But it took me time to kind of find. So when I left South Africa after 6 months, because I was then going back to Europe to complete my studies, I didn't think I was coming back to South Africa, because it wasn't a nice, beautiful, this moment of coming home or just belonging. It was not like that. It challenged me deeply. But when I then made a commitment that I'm going to stay a couple of years more in Norway, I'm not allowed to leave before I have done something for African young people in this country, because nothing existed. Yeah. And I did that. I started African Youth in Norway, an empowerment organization for children and youth.
African Youth
in Norway.
And African Youth in Norway.
In Norway.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was kind of my ticket out. And then I was scouting because I just knew since I was very little that I was gonna live somewhere on the African continent.
Yeah.
And South Africa became the choice. And now I'm very glad for that. But I think at the time, I wasn't sure how this is going to work out. Yeah. And I thought maybe also because I had some track record within South Africa and people that I looked up to and that I felt were strong within the revolutionary space and all of that, they got my back. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to get stuff working. I can just knock on doors. People closed the doors quickly. So the money I had saved up for my 2 first years of existence probably ran out the first year. And no jobs, I was willing to take a job at that time because I thought this is a way to get out or get in. I can't really account for how I survived the first 5 to 8 years in South Africa.
Yeah.
I just remember there were times when people would visit and I was like, what am I going to feed these people? I have nothing even for myself. But somehow things worked out. And I think this may sound like a privileged journey in that when I say that I have always found some solutions, even if it's been extremely hard. I've never felt completely over the edge. And it's not because I belong to, I have an army around me that has money or that I belong in moneyed spaces. Yeah. But I believe that it's because I was willing to follow the purpose that was revealed to me at quite a young age. And I don't want it to sound too mystic. It's literally about serving the African community. Yeah. And I know that can sound a bit snotty and a bit like, I'm serving the African community, so I'm such a great person. It's not necessarily that, but it's my view on us as African people. We are at war. We are attacked from all angles. Yeah. And if we are not going to do much more than protest it and say we are against it and write articles and have conferences, we are also choosing that we're going to live with that for the next 1,000 years. True. And I feel that's quite a dangerous commitment in a lifespan that maybe I have 40 to 50 really productive years to spend. And I feel that's very small. It's very short. We need to get cracking.
I want to go back a bit. I found out recently something I didn't know. So we've joked about it before that Durban, KwaZulu-Natal has got the biggest population of Indian people outside of India, for people that don't know.
Right.
It's quite fascinating.
Yeah, true.
I found out recently that Brazil, I think it's Brazil, has got the largest population of black.
That's right.
Black people.
Absolutely.
Outside of Africa. We don't think of Brazil like that. It was a Portuguese colony.
Sure.
People think of the football, etc.
Yeah. There's even a stereotype about the lighter shade of brownish type of beautiful women.
We know African Americans, of course, hip hop, American culture, but we never think of the biggest population of black people outside of the African continent in Brazil.
Absolutely.
What do you think Africans are missing? I know we took up a gap there from when you got to South Africa and finding your feet. Sure. What do you think, if Africans, ordinary Africans, especially black South Africans are listening, what do you think they're missing in terms of connecting with people from the Caribbean islands, maybe even African Americans as well, to be like, guys, even if it's just a little part of your life, 2 years of service, please maybe connect with someone there. Please go visit Jamaica or Anguilla. Go visit the islands, maybe even visit Brazil, and maybe go donate something or invite some of these people to visit you. Or if you meet someone from somewhere else, outside of the African continent, please just smile and can you just give them this line, welcome home? Because it does so much to them. Like what would you say to normal Africans who actually don't really know what's going on that side?
I think, first of all, our ignorance about each other, and I think it goes many ways, is systemic. We're not supposed to really know or even like Africans from other places in the world. So we are doing quite well in hating on blackness. We do very well what our oppressors have instructed us. Yeah. And I think there is a tendency for both sides. And with my experience, I feel that I can kind of see it from both sides. I can see the Caribbean ignorance where people are saying, go to Africa, these people have sold us. That's what some people would say. And I also know what it means on this side of this. These people are just slaves. There's nothing, they don't remember or respect Africa. And I know a much deeper story on both sides. Yeah. So I think me being in South Africa and obviously knowing people from other parts in the African world, also outside of the continent, has allowed many people to connect with me and come through and spend some time with us here. And like I said, I feel I can see both sides because there is ignorance on both sides.
Yeah.
And it's a gap.
Education,
but maybe like you are alluding to the experience.
Yeah.
Because I see a difference in the younger generation that I'm dealing with now, who grow in their blackness first and foremost through TikTok and social media.
Correct.
And they navigate to spaces and voices that when we grew up, we would have to travel very far to find.
Okay.
And I think that opens them up a little bit. But it's, life is not TikTok. Life is not a managed, edited version of a 5-minute video. It's also being bored. It's also sitting, not having a job and all of those things. So for me, within the Pan-African world, I wish, just like the Jewish have, that we as African people, actually wherever we are, because of our history, had a fund for teenagers. Yeah. That between 15 and 18, you have to go somewhere in another part of the African world, including the continent. Because the ignorance is not just about the African diaspora. It's also about Mali. What is Mali?
Yeah.
Burkina Faso. What is that?
I want to emphasize on what you're saying, because most people don't know. My understanding, and you'll correct me if you know better, Israel has a fund for all Jewish kids around the entire world.
That's right.
Where when you get to a certain age, they will allow you free travel to the motherland to visit Israel for any Jewish child in the world. And if that is true, you're arguing something similar. If maybe the African Union could come up with a fund and say every African in the diaspora, if you know your home of origin, your lineage, we'll send you there. If not, we'll send you to the places that we feel maybe are the most diverse to be able to experiment and taste all of Africa. That would be dope.
And you are right. I think the first move should be that way, like from the diaspora to the continent. Yeah. But the continent must also be ready to receive, because we also see, and I see now there's a lot of YouTube videos of, predominantly African Americans that I've seen who move back to the continent.
Correct.
But I feel there's also a strong line of arrogance in how they maybe not even invite anyone from the community that they now say they are part of. Yeah. And they just divulge a lot of analysis on what this country is really like. And can people who have lived there for a couple of generations be in charge of that version? I understand that you can use your channel to talk, but where's the voices of the people you say you have joined? If they're not even there when you are actually physically in the country, that could be a problem. And I think many people on the continent can experience the African diaspora as very arrogant, as I've seen people come here and like on the first day say, guys, you should set up shop here. Why are you not doing anything with this? What is guys, you don't even have an economic
100%.
Have you been here long enough to understand why?
Yeah.
Just be quiet. Take like first week, don't say anything. Just walk around, just sit at the back. Don't even presence yourself so strongly, because I think that's something that maybe, and this is my experience as well, in the diaspora, you have to be what is considered rude here. You walk up to people and you introduce yourself. Yeah. My name is, who are you? Like, you have to do that. Here, that is quite rude to do that. You wait until you're called. If you're younger, you wait for an older person to be the first person. In the diaspora, because you are on the attack all the time. Yeah. So you cannot do that. But there's something we need to do to modify that, because otherwise it becomes a clash. And people are saying, these people from America or from the diaspora, they are very confident. But there's also a survival mechanism that comes to the fore in that.
We had a lady, Maria Mchali, who came from America. Her father was South African. She grew up in America, and then she came to be an exchange student in high school. And at that young age, and it would replicate itself throughout my life, when we meet Americans, of course white, but let's even say black, there's this assumption that they come from the land of milk and honey. They are smarter, they are more educated, they are more exposed, and even they get shocked at how much greatness we give them.
Right.
And some of them, yes, they unfortunately come with this mindset, which I guess you'd call it a colonizer's mindset. We have it here in Johannesburg. If you've lived in Johannesburg for long enough and then you travel the rest of South Africa, you come with this condescending.
So true.
So you guys don't have a highway here. Exactly, How do you travel? You're like, bro, you.
What's the Wi-Fi password?
Your family is literally from here. Shut up. Yeah. But we come with that condescending, where's your McDonald's? And don't you guys have and you're like, bro, I love the idea of any let's not even make it Africans in diaspora. Any African who is moving into a new space that is foreign, to take time out and to just study. Study how the people live.
Absolutely.
All the questions and the suggestions you have, park them for now. You might find you'll get the answers.
Exactly.
While you're just spending time. And then when you're ready, start softly suggesting.
True.
And don't come with that. But you guys are backwards. You don't even have Wi-Fi.
Exactly.
And
true.
No, thank you.
True.
There was that part I wanted to speak a bit about Europe. It's interesting because we have a lot of what we call foreigners in South Africa. I think we'll touch on xenophobia and that stuff when we get a chance to. There's this weird assumption from ignorant people. And it's ignorance. There's nothing else you can do about it. You're leaving Anguilla, you're going to Norway for a better life. And then when you get there, you find hostility. You're leaving Malawi, Somalia, Sudan to South Africa for a better life. And you come here and you find hostility. And you end up feeling like an alien everywhere. And you know, even back home, things are not good. As someone who's tasted that, the psychology of someone in that space, specifically for people who are hostile to people like that, to be like, this is what I've gone through and experienced. So the next time you meet someone from Mozambique, Lesotho, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, just remember that sometimes this is what goes on in their heads.
And I think this is partly also why I want South Africans to travel to different parts of the world.
Black South Africans don't travel as much as they should.
Absolutely. Yeah. And sometimes, very often that has, because also when you talk about the view of people from the diaspora being rich, for instance, obviously it's not just your every average diaspora person who can travel far.
100%.
Not even to the next country,
100%.
let alone another continent.
I've seen this in America where people from LA on the other side of the country, I think it's a 6-hour flight to New York. It's a huge deal. Like, you've been to New York, but it's America.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a big deal.
True. So equally here as well, travel is often reserved for economic reasons, but of course it also has something to do with the mind, because I keep saying to the young people that I spend time with, like, save up for a bus ride. Just go to Zim, just go to Namibia, just go across the border, just go to another city in South Africa.
Yeah. Just go to another city in South Africa.
Just that. And people will say, but I don't know anyone there. Exactly. That's why you must go. So you can find out, is this the same country? Do you have the same experience? Just that. Yeah. And I know for many people that becomes a luxury because it's not a priority. And if it is, it's supposed to. I mean, we see these travel shows where people go on yachts and have 3-course dinners and things like that. So you start to think, and I'm so glad that I woke up to that. You know, I spoke about having this urge to travel. So even when I was in Europe, there's something called Interrail, where you can buy a ticket for a month and you can jump on any train. I think it's such a great ticket. Yeah. I think at that time it probably cost like 2,500 Rand or something, which was an amount, but it was possible.
Sure.
So after some work and everything, you could save up. And just so my idea was to jump on trains and go to big cities and just meet with other Africans, because there wasn't the internet, there wasn't ways that we can connect that way now. And it was an amazing journey. I learned so much. It built me so much. Yeah. And I think even for South Africans to just go and spend some time in another African country, it humbles you. Yeah. You realize that these Nigerians and these Sudanese and these DRC people is not what you thought it was, because you base your conviction on one news report, many strange conversations on internet, and maybe one encounter, hardly even that, but maybe one.
Sure.
And then you think you can talk about all Nigerians.
Sure. And the propaganda.
Yeah.
Nigerians are selling drugs.
Absolutely.
The Zimbabweans are committing violent crimes. The propaganda also pumps.
And you will learn something, not just that it will humble you, but it will also learn about, I think it should be mandatory for every business owner, especially when you start small and you are, to go to a country like Nigeria and understand that people are actually entrepreneurs. It's not a thing. It's something that you have to do to survive. It's not like, I'm an entrepreneur. It's not like that. You don't have a business card, but you run 3 businesses and you don't even think of yourself as a business person. But many people, because of the history in this country, many people don't even know how to find the mindset to really open up a business, because who am I? What do I know? I don't know people who can help me, because that's what it seems like that it takes. Yeah. You need somebody to take you're under their wing.
Yeah. We don't have a culture. It's one of the things that hurts me. And I've heard someone, it was a video back in the day, this guy, I forgot his name, would make summary videos of books. And one of the books he profiled, I don't know if it was The Richest Man in Babylon or Rich Dad Poor Dad or Think and Grow Rich. He was explaining that the country that I come from being a salesman has a derogatory term.
Right.
So it's frowned upon to sell.
Yeah.
Even in a country like South Africa, where we claim we're about small businesses and entrepreneurship, it's going to take a while. We still frown upon people that are trying to sell you stuff. And we need to change that culture.
Absolutely.
In Asia, and as you're saying in Nigeria, it's not like that.
Absolutely.
To them, it's not a hype that I sell something. They don't have the mentality of, I need a job.
Yeah.
They have a mentality of, what can I grow? What can I make? What can I build? What can I go buy at a low price and sell at a high price? Exactly. And it becomes a culture.
Exactly, yeah.
And we've had friends, I've had friends come on the platforms, of which one of them is a gentleman by the name of Sabulela Nganga. He comes from a town called Sterkspruit in the Eastern Cape. From primary school, he started selling peaches. From there, he started taking photos. When he moved to Joburg at Sakani, he took photos of kids in class. And then from there, he got pay phones. To this day, he's a mining engineer. He works as an exec for different mining companies. He earns really well. Yeah. But he hasn't lost that thing. He always has to sell something. And he'll never go hungry.
Exactly.
And I'm like, if only South Africans and maybe other Africans as well could pick up this culture of saying, every day I will sell something. Yeah. I will sell something. And I want to have this skill. Whether I have a job or not, doesn't matter.
True.
To a point where maybe whenever you meet someone, how are you? Who are you? Where are you from? What are you selling?
Exactly. And like you said, it's a mindset.
Yeah.
And I think that's the culture we really need, because the South African mind has been over many generations designed to not be necessarily thinking outside of the box that it was supposed to be exist within. And that doesn't mean that I don't know many South Africans who definitely have climbed out of that box and exploded that box many times over. But I'm just saying that the dominant mindset is that for you to get an opportunity, you need to get closer to whiteness, to richness, to people who can take care of your bills so that you can thrive. Yeah. But what people don't also then think about is that when you do that, because it is one opportunity for some, but it also enslaves you again. Because now you don't bring your Africanness into these boardrooms. Don't bring the identity. If you need to go and partner, that's not something we're going to be responsible for. You do that on your own time. Don't even talk about it. We're gonna devalue you the more you presence your identity. So you also learn to compromise yourself, to become less. Yeah. And I think maybe we haven't even seen the type of trauma that many of the great business women and great businessmen, black business women and men in this country actually suffer on a daily basis.
Jeez, that's a scary thought.
It is.
Multimillionaires, arguably billionaires, black, that we celebrate, that are on the magazine covers.
Thank you.
Who maybe cry in silence about some of the racist feelings, some of the ways their own communities call them names.
Absolutely.
The ways they cannot express themselves fully.
True.
It's also why for many people, white people in particular, but many educated professional black people, they found themselves feeling very uncomfortable about Jacob Zuma.
Oh yes.
Of which he's a polarizing character for many reasons.
Absolutely.
But the idea of a head of state somewhere at the United Nations, at the World Health Organization, these clean places, wearing a suit, who just breaks out in song.
Sure.
Who just starts dancing.
Exactly.
Who's comfortably a polygamist and is not ashamed.
All the things they spent effort to teach us never to even think about.
And he'd speak his own native language, even in parliament, just unsolicited.
Exactly.
I saw a clip recently where, very funny piece, where Jacob Zuma's like, Angistand is Shiman. Shiman is a man who's scared of approaching women. Angistand is Shiman. Kumele ukwazi ukushela mawuyindoda. Ukushela is to make on a woman. It took me to a time when he gave another speech years ago, speaking to a crowd saying, if you want to be a councillor or a mayor, kumele ube igagu. Gagu, I think, is maybe like a charmer, charismatic man. You can't just call someone. You must be soft and gentle and win people over. Yeah. And Vusi Tembewayo has also spoken about the ability to share, because again, this now becomes part of the selling culture once you know it. We joke about Indians, how much you got, my friend? Sure. How much you got? No, I give you a good price.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is their way of macking. And for Africans, we could find our own ways. You see a woman with a nice body, you sell dresses, you're like, yo, my sister, you look amazing, but
yeah, I can set you up.
You don't look as amazing as you should look. What do you mean? No, there's this dress I've seen, man. Sure. And we make that a cultural thing. I think that would be really dope. But the Africanness in how we do business is something I've spoken about in the past. myself and Utebza were in a WhatsApp group called Business and Politics. And I'd go to places like Brinoord, Plain Streets. There's those guys that sell secondhand clothes. Sure. There was a time when I was in Hillbrow. I met up with a man there who comes every day with a bakkie filled with spinach at the back. And I asked these questions, very direct. Sure. How much do you make here? How much is... And you can see a bale of clothes could make 10,000 Rand. And how many bales are there? This guy tells you he makes 3,000 Rand a day selling spinach on the back of a bakkie that he grows on his little yard. And you're like, this is African business.
Yeah. True.
It doesn't have to be, but is it eco-friendly? Is it gluten-free? Sure. What about that? You're like, this is us. This is us trading. And it's going to take a lot of work. There's a gap in your life which you claim you don't remember, and you don't have to speak about it. A lot of people look at people that come here without a plan, and they sometimes find themselves getting forced to do not nice things. I've been a loan shark in the past. It wasn't because of desperation. It was just, I wanted to make money. It was a thing I did. During the 5 to 8 years where you don't know how you were surviving, you never ever considered trying to do funny things. Maybe let's not say crime. You said you were privileged, but maybe even crime. Would you be comfortable to share? Do you remember?
Oh, yes. No, I think the thought is always, not always, but in desperate situations, and you see other people are making money, and you meet people who get money. And I think when you are on a downward spiral, it's difficult. I've tried to always keep it a thing that I spend time with people that I admire, that I look up to. But at times you also feel that your own self-confidence is so low that even going there and be asked, so what do you do now? Well, I'm still trying. Like, you don't even want to sit there. So it's easier to spend time with people who do other things that may be seen in a lower range in society. And then you also pick up ideas and you hear stories so definitely I think, but I've always, I mean, when I was very young, I dabbled a bit in the small petty crime industry. I dabbled a bit. I dabbled a bit. I visited the area. But I think part of that was also me trying to show off that I wanted to be a bit more dangerous than... I wanted to put a stop to being taken advantage of. I come from a history of being bullied, put down, like all of that. And I think it was a way to kind of
what are mark petty crimes?
Sorry?
What are petty crimes? Stealing?
So petty crimes would be to small break-ins, go to somebody's house and take whatever you could find, things like that.
This was not in Norway?
That was in Norway. Okay. No, I've never done anything like that. Sure. I think... And this is important also in the conversation of those in South Africa who say, I hate these foreigners who don't have papers. Many don't have papers, and it's very rarely because you don't want to have a paper. It's because the bureaucracy around paper, the waiting lines, and if you want to jump the line, what you need to pay to actually get a paper within a reasonable amount of time is so high that you can't measure up to that. So it's also a very flawed argument that I don't have a problem with people coming from other places, but they don't have papers. But then the system is supposed to deliver those papers. People are not sitting, let me not have papers. That would be really nice. That never happens.
We're not having this conversation. And because of the content that I create, I get a lot of African foreigners. I'm calling them foreigners because they're not South African. African foreigners who come up to me. And we have very frank conversations. And I appreciate that they trust me. And they tell me I don't have papers. I'm here illegally. And they even tell me what they do to make money. A lot of them are working, trading, business. Some of them will tell me that, look, I get into crime. For some reason, they trust me. But then they've spoken about, and it's come out very little, that there's a huge problem at Home Affairs.
Absolutely.
There's a huge backlog of people that should be here, who qualify, who have scarce skills.
True.
I've had people who have been waiting for years to have their permits renewed. They initially got papers.
That's right.
Their papers expired. I had a lady, I'm not going to mention where, but the lady was like, one of the guys at Home Affairs said they can sort me out for 30,000 Rand.
Yeah, exactly.
30,000 Rand is a lot of money.
Yeah. For something that you are obliged to get by law.
Yes. Yeah. So part of the issue we have, because there's a lot of issues, is our Home Affairs is broken. And I've spoken to Dr. Aaron Mutwaledi maybe 2 years ago, and I think he recently joined Home Affairs coming from the Department of Health. And he was speaking about a lot of the people that work, they are not trained.
Yeah.
It's like police get trained, nurses get trained. We don't have like a college for people that work there. A lot of the systems are legacy to a point where you'll go on a system and you'll find out your parents are not married.
Yeah.
But it's because they were still capturing it manually back in 80 whatever. And it's not on the system and has not been captured.
That's right.
The systems crash, whether it's done intentionally or
you could
weak
argue
systems.
That too.
And then there's a huge backlog. And I know the year before last year, they tried to recruit 10,000. That's what they were saying. They wanted 10,000 young people to come to Home Affairs,
I remember
to transcribe from manual to, I don't know what happened to that project, but as the heartbeat of what's meant to be a nation, a sovereign nation, colonial systems, the fact that we can't sort that out is very scary. And to what you're saying, there are people who are here illegally in the same way that there are people who work in companies with fake papers, South Africans. And it's like, it's not because I don't want to study or get papers.
Yes.
And it's not like I'm in this company to steal. But I need you guys to understand the nuances and that there are certain systematic issues that the people in charge of the systems are not sorting out. So that then you guys can bash us.
True.
We're here illegally, you want to hurt you, and you're like, bash us then, it's fine.
Right.
But you guys also haven't solved this thing. And that now becomes your problem with your government. And it's heartbreaking. And it's a conversation that I think if someone ever did a deep dive documentary.
Yes, I agree.
To probably lead to a lot of arrests. Hopefully it wouldn't lead to any potential homicides, but it would be a mess. There's a great channel called The Agenda Network, which profiles stories of prisoners or ex-prisoners, I'm not sure.
Yes, I'm aware of it.
And one of my favorite stories is this gentleman who used to work at Home Affairs, I believe, telling a story of how they were making money corruptly at Home Affairs because they would manufacture IDs and then they linked with people. No, I think he worked at SASA, where they paid grants. Okay. And then they ended up working with people that make IDs and they created all these fictitious IDs and then they'd pay. Like, he was just, I'd like to think he was a small part of a deeper issue that we have.
Right.
Your thoughts on xenophobia in South Africa? Just xenophobia in South Africa.
I would like to frame it as Afrophobia because there's a systemic element in how we relate to blackness worldwide, historically, and what has been done to us. And since the black body has been a target for so many levels of violence, we have also become complicit in how we look at that, in what we deserve, the violence that we deserve, and the violence that we also take part in, either not seeing or trying not to pretend that we don't see, so we kind of allow it, or actually also take part in unleashing on fellow black people. I frame it within that understanding.
Afrophobia.
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 So phobia is a deep psychological anxiety and fear for what is different.
Okay.
If that's what we were struggling with, white people would be in the sea right now.
Yeah.
And clearly we're not struggling with that.
Yeah.
White people walk around very comfortably in most places in South Africa. We target those who look like us or are a shade darker than us or have some form of accentuating the Africanness that irritates. I feel that's very much not just the South African. I'm not trying to frame that this only happens in South Africa, but I think it happens in a particular way because of how people are squeezed into corners of oppression in this country still, in terms of where they live, in terms of promises that are being made to them, in terms of that everybody's living with this dream. Soon I will be moving into X, Y, and Z. Soon I'll get a better paid. Soon I will be, and that soon never comes. Yeah. And a government that keeps saying this, vote for us and we're going to give you this, just know that you should go the other opposite direction of that because it's not going to happen. So I think there's a very strong systemic reason for these types of violence and aversions that many South Africans have. But my dominant experience, I think this is why I have stayed in South Africa and this is my home. I have access to so many I think it's very important for me to say this, incredible South Africans that I learn from, that I look up to, that I hold them in high esteem for what they know and for what they do, their work ethics, for all of that. Yeah. But there's also a subsection of the South African society that is very susceptible to the idea that, this thing of saying that these people are coming for you. Yeah. And when you, as an African with a history of us being invaded multiple times, hear that somebody's coming for us, you know what? The only thing we must do then is to defend ourselves. And if these people also don't have the power that our real oppressors really have, because we're not really going for them, which we should, we then find easier way. It's easier to put somebody out who's already have a weak infrastructure, who may not have the papers, who may not have some of the things we now claim. It's interesting for me that South Africans who have lived under unjust laws since forever, like democracy or not, now say, but you must have a paper. Is that how you look at this state? Like if they can just issue papers, then everything is fine. You don't have a paper for the plot that you own. You could be taken to court because there's something wrong with your paperwork. You also face these discriminatory practices. But now all of a sudden when it's someone else, now I agree with South Africa, I stand for South African law. We have the best constitution in the world. Nonsense.
But it makes sense, right? Because it's a survival.
Exactly.
It's a survival and it's a hypocrisy that is like, the only reason you're hypocritical is because you're scared and you want to go for the weaker link and
True. But I will say this, and remember I've said about the great South Africans that I admire, but I need to say this. I've lived in Europe. I've heard white people, I have been attacked by white people who just want to eliminate me. And it's for those who have not experienced that, it is I remember just being 19 years of age, standing on a train station in Germany, not speaking or understanding German. And like, because you would think that if a racist, they would instigate a situation, like they would bump into you or they would talk to you and say, you can't even speak German, something like that situation. But immediately as he just turns to me and said, he's black bastard, something. Like immediately. And there is no way to prepare for that because you'd like to walk around in society even if you know that things can happen. Like you're not going to be in attack mode for everything that happens. So in that moment, you may have relaxed yourself. And then what is the response to somebody who just belts out, you are an animal. You're also an animal. Like what do you say in that moment? It's just for reference. But having listened to and heard many ultra right-wing white racists talk a particular language about these foreigners, about these animals, about these people who are coming for us. I had never, until early 2000s, heard black people speak like that. My first experience of that was in South Africa, hearing black people talk exactly the same way that white racists talk. And I was thinking, wow, we are very loyal to our master's voices because that is not even your voice. That is not even your experience. That is not even how you have been brought into this world. Let's remember that white supremacy survives on fear. It's the main ingredient in white supremacy. White people are scared. They may not consciously be aware of it. I think sometimes they are, but maybe they don't have to deal with it as a deep anxiety, but it is.
I fully agree.
Because they
always under attack.
Always
under attack.
Exactly. So when we take that on, because our philosophical stand comes from a sense of confidence. So yes, I may be aware that I'm being attacked. I may be aware that you're trying to destroy my culture. I may be aware that you're trying to put me down. But I come from a sense of confidence because my confidence, if I'm in my real state as an African, doesn't come from my individual perception on this world. It comes from me knowing my lineage. So when you confront me, you confront thousands of people. I'm here with an army. So who are you? What do you want? Like I can, if I'm in tune with that, I can respond to attacks. And that's what I feel we have lost very much as African people. We have taken on our oppressors' anxiety and we express it in a deeper way than they now do.
I've got what's the right way to frame this? I struggle with the notion of a potential African utopia before colonizers came here. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on the idea of maybe some of the animosity we show towards each other as black people, as Africans, maybe it is not unique to white colonizers and oppressors. Do you think black Africans are a superior being to white Europeans? Black Africans and white Europeans? Do you think we wouldn't be hostile to each other over territory and those things? Because one of the arguments I normally have is history tells us, whether it's white history, whatever history you want, that we always fought over territory before colonizers came here. And when we fought, we don't know, unfortunately, how it was documented. Sure. Is it because they taller, blacker, bigger nose? Sure. And how hostile do we get? And how much do we hate them? Or is it really something that was brought by white people? I'm trying to figure out if this thing is just a human problem, or if maybe it actually might be a white problem and we need to try and resolve that.
I definitely think it's a white problem. I think there's something wrong with whiteness. Like, it's not just your average hatred or your average human feeling despise against someone. There's something very deep. And there's a is it Michael Bradley, a white Canadian, who has written a book called The Iceman Inheritance, which is quite an interesting read, whether you agree or not. But he talks about how white hostility was birthed during Ice Age and how the Caucasian outlook on the world was so deeply embedded also within the experience of extreme coldness. Yeah. And part of that book kind of resonates with how I've experienced Europeans, because I guess there's no violence or attack that you can necessarily understand and just justify. Yeah. But there's something about the warped European, it's just different.
And they tend to go into territories that are not theirs. Whereas
absolutely.
Maybe for Africans, we don't have a history of just going into.
And I think I don't have a utopic vision of Africa that everything was just incredibly harmless and everybody was just holding hands and everything was just flowery. But I would say that my understanding of African history is that let me use the word superior, that we had a superior culture to what we have now gotten used to, because it wasn't, and for instance, there's examples of conflicts that we hear about between two peoples where when the first fatality is committed, the war stops, because then the point has been made. We have actually gone to the extent of killing someone. So there's no need to, and I feel sometimes when I lecture on this, I try to maybe in a mocking way explain the European spirit in that sense, where I'm imagining Europeans coming back from that colonial war and saying, we just killed everybody. What do you mean? What did they do to you? No, we just killed everybody. Yeah, but what happened? Why did you? No, we just killed everybody. Yeah, I hear that, but why? What did they do? I said, no, we just killed everybody. But that doesn't make sense. If you wanted something, it makes sense. If you wanted, like, if they had something that you think actually belonged to you at one point, that makes sense. But just killing everybody for the sake of killing, that doesn't come from any human value that I can recognize. And again, I'm saying that, I guess, greed, power sickness, cheating, doing things that are not by the book has always existed to some extent in all our societies. But I just think it was at a much lower frequency. That intensity of just killing for the sake of killing, destroying. We destroyed 5,000 books in the library. What did you do with them? No, we just destroyed them. Yeah, but that does not make sense. So I would say that with the history I learn about our ancient foremothers and forefathers speaks to a different ways of dealing even with conflicts and even those aspects of life that may not always have been nice.
Michael Bradley, The Iceman Inheritance, Prehistoric Sources of Western Man's Racism, Sexism, and Aggression. Do you think part of the reason, assuming that we agree with your view of we had a superior culture, do you think part of it is scarcity and abundance? The argument being white Europeans, because they used to have their own conflicts and wars. They became overcrowded.
Viciously so.
And they learned to become strong. I mean, you've got the Vikings and those guys. They became so trained to be like that. And then they started kicking each other out of that space. And then they came to Africa where the reason we didn't have that type of violence because we lived in abundance. There's more than enough land, more than enough water, more than enough food, more than enough animals. We could fight over territory. I want the better part of the river, but it doesn't have to be that hectic. And they came with this thing of everything is up for grabs and everything is desperate. And do you think it arguably could be that?
There's absolutely very possible that elements of that is there. I can't account for whiteness in the sense that I don't really understand it. I live with the consequences of it and how it presents itself. But there might be truths in what you are saying there, that the way, because a lot of the philosophical standpoint of Westernization is conflict. Is that I'm going to attack you so that you don't attack me. But there's no conflict. We don't need to do that. But just the thought that you could at one point want to. So I need to eliminate you so that you don't eliminate me. that's an outlook of fear, and maybe it has resonated. I think the Michael Bradley book speaks to some elements of what you are saying now as well. But I think, I like philosophy. I like to think myself to different spaces. But I think as I'm aging and realizing that I have less time to do all the things that I feel I need to be involved in, I spend much more time at what is at hand. So, for instance, I'm not saying your question is the same to this, but for instance, people are asking, I wonder if there's life on other planets. I'll deal with that if I come across a person or a being. Right now, yes, it's an interesting question. And yes, if somebody has met somebody, there's a part of me that I want to hear that story. Sure. But it also doesn't resolve poverty. It doesn't resolve housing. It doesn't resolve that most of us hate African spirituality. We have a problem with colorism. We have a problem with skin tones. We have a problem with African people. And those are things that I at least can be involved in. Sure. So I try to spend more time finding those answers.
The reason I was trying to draw the parallel with Europe's scarcity and them coming here is, if we're going to discuss xenophobia, in this instance, Black South African xenophobia, there's xenophobia in other places, or Afrophobia. The idea that a Black South African man with a huge farm, who's got a great enterprise, would worry as much about Africans coming here than Black South Africans in RDPs or in a squatter camp, feeling like we're already cramped. We don't have jobs. They might be angrier, more hateful, whereas we might have the privilege and the open-minded of, but guys, everything's up for grabs because we have an abundance mindset, and you can only have that fear and that insecurity and that from a scarcity mindset of feeling like, because we're like, look, if South Africa bombed, we'll move to Tanzania.
Exactly.
If that bombs, look, we'll go to Japan. Our minds are open like that. Other people, it's like, but this is my home. And you're like, really? This shack? Yeah. And this Zimbabwean guy is coming to take your shack. That's what you're fighting for, the shack. Like, there's something wrong.
No, I agree that it's based on a psychology of dispossession and not having power. But I feel that frames not just the lowest level of poverty, because there are also people who are not necessarily representing that strata in society that also have very strong, violent views on people coming here to our country and doing this. I think it also speaks to a broader experience that we've had, which is systemic, about blackness, about what we have not been given, what we are fighting for, what we always sit in a small corner, not knowing how to position the power, other than protesting, saying we're against it, and attacking each other. Black on black violence is a thing in this world. In America it is, in the Caribbean it is, in Europe it is, everywhere where we exist, there are elements of us trying to take each other out. For reasons that when you look at it, at least with some distance, you can say, but we could actually have resolved this. It didn't have to go to that level. So I'm not denying what you are saying, that there's a difference when you look at the world as a place of, I can belong in different places. I can move. I have some mobility. But I'm saying it because it's not only, and I think some of the faces that we've seen advocating for what I would say is very strong Afrophobic views and actions are not necessarily those who fit into that category, that they have no other options. They are completely stricken by poverty. So I think there's other layers to it as well.
I hear you. One of the reasons I love you and I love your work so much is because you're rooted in solutions, and you're rooted in peace and love, and black love in particular, which is contrary to, so I've had Joshua Maponga here. He's got an element, a big element of what you have, but he's also got another element of anger and almost wanting to push back. And then I've had Dr. Umar Ifatunde. He used to be Dr. Umar Johnson. He calls himself an American African. We'd call him an African American or a Black American. He's almost very big on the militancy. I know Louis Farrakhan of the Nation of Islam is the same. What do you think of people like, let's say, Joshua Maponga, Dr. Umar Ifatunde, Louis Farrakhan? We've got Prof. Lumumba now.
Andile Mngxitama.
How do you feel about them? A lot of them are angry. They almost want to fight back. You're not necessarily about that. Do you support their stance as well?
Absolutely. I thank the black gods for angry black people. I think we must be more angry. But I think, and I'm not saying I perfected it, but I think over the years I have been very consciously redirecting my anger into something that's productive. And I think I was much angrier also in how I spoke and how I moved at an earlier stage in my journey.
Yeah.
Also when there were fewer voices who spoke like that. Because we're supposed to be, like, it's psychologically, it makes sense that we are angry for what has been done to us without us being on the deserving end of any of it. That should have a reaction of anger. That's how you normally respond when somebody does something that is completely unfair to you.
Yeah.
So the lack of or the absence of anger to me is very troublesome. It's very troublesome. But that doesn't mean that I favor it, saying that that's the best we can do. If we just talk about how we're going to kill white people, if we can just talk about how we're going to do the same thing back to white people. I find that often those voices, and I'm not necessarily referencing the ones you mentioned now, but in our communities, I see people who voice that strongly, and maybe also those who are not involved in any form of action.
Yeah.
And I love the brothers you brought up right now. I can't account for what they do on a daily basis because I don't spend time with them. I haven't been to their homes. I don't know what their partners talk about. I haven't met their children. And that's something that I think, I hope I'm not being judgmental, but that's something that gives me an insight to you as a person. If you're, when I meet you and your children really gravitates towards you, they want to sit on your lap, that means something to me.
Yeah.
If they're still playing in the background, they don't even ask you for anything. I know I can't base my understanding of you, but it means something. Why you are their father? Like, why don't they want to spend time with you? Why are they not happy that you're home? Yeah. That means something to me. So I'm just saying that I can't account for the daily practices, but the voices are very, very important. Yeah. What I find problematic is that as an African audience to voices like that, when are we going to go beyond being audience? Like we gravitate to liking, subscribing, going to and say, I support. Yeah. But then I want to see, so based on this, now you're doing what? Like, so now you started what? Let me see what you like. Can we just talk about? Can we exchange?
Sure.
Yeah, no, I'm still thinking about it. One day I'm going to, no, but then what did you learn from these incredible high priests that you now, and I've always, I keep saying this, I've learned a lot from the people I don't want to become. Yeah. And I hope that I never appear as one of these people who are just talking a good game. Yeah. And then people can just say, I like him or I don't like him. And then they go home and they're done. When I speak, I'm not a speaker with lots of punchline and people clap and right. I was always envious of that when I was young. I remember my first speech, I wanted to go to Malcolm X and I ended up saying, that's why we are held back as a people. And the room was quiet. And in my mind, they were going to go crazy. They're throwing chairs. They were just like, they said nothing. Yeah. And I'm like, what did I do wrong? And I understood, okay, there's a technique to how you move an audience. You can't just say a sentence out of a documentary. But then I also understood that I'm not that type of speaker. Yeah. And I don't have to emulate because others do that really, really well. And I like really it. Well, yeah. But I'm more a speaker that maybe makes you uncomfortable because I bring in a personal story or our story in a way that makes you think, I'm not doing anything. So it's a bit uncomfortable. Yeah. Some people say that to me, like, it's like you're talking to me. And I think I like that for me more than trying to copy or be what seems to be a certain template of a Pan-African leader or a Pan-African speaker. Yeah. And I would say this, that within the Pan-African community, which I definitely see myself as a part of, I sometimes also feel that I'm walking a very different way than many of my comrades around me because I presence family, I presence Black love, I presence, I want to have a stronger language about who and what I love than what and who I hate.
Okay.
So I'm not denying that I'm also hateful. I'm not denying that I'm also aggressive. I also hate.
But my energy is more focused here.
And touch me on my studio. No, if you touch me on my studio, I'm responding. Yeah. What I mean is that my peaceful nature is not bound to always react that way. Yeah. But I want to minimize it because when I allow anger to consume me, I also lose control. Correct. I also say things in a manner that later on I think I could have said that much better. Yeah. That was not the right way I wanted to handle it. Yeah. And I want to have few of those or fewer. I think that's what maturity should mean, that I have fewer of those episodes. Yeah. And that even in my anger, I choose how I'm going to respond. And I rather say, but you see, you guys, you can't do this. I'd rather say, you know what? You do that one more time and you see what's going to happen. Like, I'd rather want to respond like that and just...
Lose control.
Yes, I want to be in control.
Managed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I also realize that can also be a privilege, because as African people, we often do not have the privilege to step back, analyze, take notes, consult some works, and then go in, because I'm being forced off my land now. Yeah. I'm being forcibly removed now. I'm about to be hanged now. Those are the experiences we come from. And in those, there's no time for taking back and saying, you know what, let me rephrase what I just said. No, you can't do that. So there's I appreciate anger as well.
I love the call to action element that you're raising. And when I sit with Pan-Africanist, pro-Black activists, it's one of the things I try to raise. Often you get a lot of pushback and anger, because it's like, what do you mean?
Sure.
But this is what we need to... Joshua Mapong I've sat with, he's spoken about the indigenous knowledge systems. It's systems that he says he's working on. He's written books, of course, which become literature. He's created social media platforms, a Telegram group where you can find books written by African authors, etc., etc. I think that's beautiful. And then obviously he travels around, but I've tried to push him. And look, he has said, I'm limited, and I'm hoping some of you guys can come through and help. So that's great. Dr. Umar Fatunde, I think after being pushed for so long, ended up with the Frederick Douglass school. Sorry. With the Frederick Douglass School but what are you doing? It's like, okay, I'm going to build this institution where we can bring young, I think Black boys in particular, to groom them. The project is still ongoing. Andile Mngitama, these are just examples. And I'm only raising these examples for people out there to think about exactly what you said. It's nice that you have an audience. It's nice that people are liking, clicking, sharing. Oh, did you see this clip? Yo, this guy's breathing fire.
Exactly.
Andile Mngitama is someone that I hold in high regard. I've said to him with DJ Sbu. I've invited him back. He's called me a sellout and a puppet, which is okay.
Yeah.
But I've said to him, look, outside of everything else, I'm always happy to sit with you. But you preach Black First, Land First, the BLF, which was his political party. Suggestions, unsolicited.
Exactly.
Use them, don't use them.
Yeah.
I admire AfriForum, which is an Afrikaans group which focuses on Afrikaner issues and other minorities. I said, look, copy and paste. Your issue is getting Black people their land. And you've said whatever Black people do with their land, it's none of your business. We just want our land. I've said there are various ways. One of them being use BLF as a vehicle to push the court cases where people are meant to get restitution, land redistribution. Number one.
Because it's a framework for that.
We, even if you hate us, even if we hate you, many of us will fund that. Yeah. Because you've got a team of lawyers. You can get Otembek and Ngogai Toby. You can maybe get a senior advocate, Dalimpof. You can get anyone. And get them to be like, what's happening with these cases? Why, like Home Affairs, why is there still a backlog? Why has this family not received their land or their money, whatever? That's the one part. The second part is we'll also fund freely for you guys to have a fund to buy. Yes, we're not going to buy land that was stolen. It's fine. We're saying the goal is to get people land. We'll give you some money to go and buy land and give it to communities. And let them work. We'll give you money to market, because I think that's another thing they lack. They're not that big to market the work you're doing and solicit support from the diaspora. Maybe even from white people. You know, one of the things we don't speak about much is if we claim Europeans took our stuff, there are intelligent ways to get them back.
Absolutely.
Have a campaign where you say, look, African babies are poor, they're hungry, they're starving. If you donate $1, if you donate €1, we get to feed a child. In that way, it becomes reparations. It may not look like it. It may look like you're begging. You're like, that's our money. That's our wealth. And some of these white Europeans will come here and build institutions and fund. And don't look at it as we don't want handouts. It's they bringing back some of what they took. Like just rewire your mind. So Andile was just an example. The point is, after all the preaching and the Martin Luther King and the Malcolm X's and the Prof. Lumumbas, the question is to your audience, what is then the call to action? Please fund this because this is what we're doing. Please do this. Please go home and hug your woman. All I ask when after a speech, go home, hug your woman, go home, kiss your kids. Go home, plant a tree. And when your kids say, Dad, what did you do? You're like, you see those 5 trees of avocado and that was my revolutionary act so that you guys have. So I think that's important and thank you for raising it.
No, it's very important. I think you are illustrating something that I think is very important within the Pan-African community as well. Penuel, you and me, I think in our conversation, we are also very aware that there are things we disagree about. There are things we would, if we would walk the same, like if we would live together, we would probably butt heads a lot around, why do you do that? Why do you? But because we also know that we walk in different paths, but there are converging points where we meet and we exchange and we choose to highlight the things that we know we have a similar or a related view on. There's no need for me to say, but Penuel said this, he went there, he has voiced this and that. How does that impact on my day? Even if I do disagree, even if I've heard, even if I've seen, what am I trying to do? And I feel that even with to bring in something that is very different to maybe this conversation, but I think is related, this Cat Williams conversation that we're now having, because an African-American comedian is now just selling how many people are gay, how many people wore dresses, how many people were...
So, sorry, just for context. So Cat Williams was on Club Shay Shay, a YouTube channel, and he dropped probably one of the biggest podcast episodes ever on the internet. And he was calling out every single comedian, calling out Hollywood, and it was a storm.
Sorry. And my problem with that is that it was framed as, finally we're talking about this. You didn't know that people are scammed in Hollywood? You didn't know that black men are being infantilized? You didn't know that? Like, I'm not taking away from what he said. I think I'm criticizing us, the audience, who say, because people who never talk about anything in the world of comedy, the world of Hollywood, sent this to me saying, wow, we're having this conversation. Cat Williams really went to town on this. And produced what?
And the question is, what did it inspire you to do to build these people?
Thank you. What did it do? Nothing. So how do we make sure that others don't have to be raped, don't have to go to Diddy's parties, don't have to, like, what are we doing with it? And that's why I'm saying related to this conversation. I want to go to
Diddy's parties. not for that, but you know.
With a camera.
No, I'm kidding. But look, shout out to P. Diddy, man, outside of the rumored scandal.
Yeah, no, I can't speak on that. But the thing is that we are also we have a weakness for hype.
Correct.
And I feel that, so I want to say this, I don't want to project myself as somebody who's completely not vulnerable to that and I'm so much better. That's not what I'm saying, but I want to have a strong filter. The actions I do, the conversations I engage in, the things that I do, the things that you find me doing when you come visiting me unannounced must be in line with what I say. Otherwise, who am I? I'm just wasting breath. I'm just talking for nothing. So I'm coming back to the queen in my life. Having been able to build and further a path beyond my own expectations, within a family that I love, being within a person that I have learned to love, and being part of a movement where constantly young people find us or contact us or come into the stream and walk with us, not forever. We're not trying to recruit members. You are entitled to your opinions. You don't have to follow a script. There's no ideology that you need to subscribe to. We are clear about what we believe in and what we think is right. So if you say that, no, we need to have white people here, then that's not going to work. But almost everything else, you could have that opinion and we're not going to say you are wrong or try to prove to you that we will want you to have a critical outlook. We will want you to have your opinions, but we want to be practical. So we need to do the seminars. For me, the type of consciousness we have in South Africa, we should have multiple African-centered schools by now.
You're right.
And we should know how to build them. It's not that mystic.
Yeah, it's a sad story. I wanna go back to this part about Cat Williams. It's something that I had to train myself as well, because you eat and then you don't go in gym. And what happens when you eat and you don't go in gym is that food gets stored as fat. You become overweight. And I feel the same about motivation. And at some point, my brother and I love watching motivational videos. The point of watching a motivational video should be to then use this fuel to go and do something. You watch a motivational video, I'm pumped, let me go to the gym. Just watch a motivational video, let me actually go work on my business. I watch a motivational video, this lady was saying something about family, let me go sit down with my woman and strategize on how we can build together. Myself and the guys at Tribal on the Penuel show, we watched this Cat Williams thing, and because we're in the space of podcasting, our initial thing is, what we unpacked. What did they do right? What did they do wrong? Shannon Sharp went and he made smaller videos, so more reach. Like, we're looking at the value of how we can say from that episode we have gained something. But you can even go further. Someone could watch that and be like, oh, actually, what's the state of comedians in South Africa? Now they speak about that.
Thank you.
Have we done enough with the David Cows and Blacks Only? Have we done enough with Trevor Noah, with Uskumba, with Kagiso Lediga, who's a director and a movie maker now? You've got Eugene Koza, who's a voice. Celeste Ntuli. You know, are we doing enough? Why are you doing something? Oh, I was sparked by that.
Sure.
Cat Williams spoke about a family issue. He ran away from home. You know, we're actually not doing enough to save kids and you literally use that as fuel. And it's a mindset I've worked on. It's a mindset that I try to get other people to work on. Whenever there's a trending story, whenever there's a big news story, whenever there's listen to it, get excited, like, tweet, retweet, post, share, and then after that, always bring it home.
Sure.
Always bring it home. There's flooding in Durban. I'm like, yo, that's tragic. Yeah. Then I bring it home. I'm like, do I know anyone in Durban? Should I send some money? Can we do some charity work?
Right.
What if it floods here? Is our stuff sorted? But what is a flood really? Is it house damage? Is my insurance covered? And always be like, okay, that thing inspired me to introspect.
Sure.
And I think that's fundamentally important.
It's fundamentally important. I agree. And to introspect, I think that's number one. To understand, what does this mean for me? What do I use this information from? What are these reminders meaning in my life? And then secondly, transform them into actionable points and choose. You can't do everything. There are certain things you choose not to do, but at least you know why. Because you don't have the money, you don't have the proximity to whatever it takes. But at least there's a concerted effort to say that I want to be practical. And that's why I always want to add the word practical to Pan-Africanism. Because I think, speaking from within the fraternity, I also need to admit that Pan-Africanism doesn't work for many people because it has become a long tirade of intellectual analysis, which I appreciate partly because they are important to us defining the world we live in and having strategies for changing it. But sometimes it has remained that. I'm very bored at conferences, Penuel. I'm very bored.
I can imagine.
And I feel that I should go, and if I'm excited, I'm very honored and I want to go and present my paper, but after I'm done, I'm like, what's the community? Where's young people come? Where should I go? Like, I want to see how people live. I don't gain a lot apart from the information that obviously I'm not saying I know everything. So there's information that I need. But when that is done, there's often a very boring way of presenting. There's a and you know, I don't subscribe to this from us. I come with my pictures. I come with pictures of people with blue hair, and then people are like, but this is not the Pan-Africans. Like, what is this? But it made you think, didn't it? And it made you maybe think about why do you have an issue with somebody having blue hair? What is that? So my point is, I think we have allowed Pan-Africanism to also become a very limited version of what we need, because I'm all about holistic work. And I understand that I cannot do everything. So my little work is one small contribution to a broader spectrum of what we need to do. But I want to do what I do very well.
You spoke about institutions or African schools. Something along those lines.
African-centered schools.
I want to give a shout out to I'd call her, I guess, a mother of mine, Queen Ya Ashantewa.
Yes, indeed.
She has the Institute of Africology. Pan-African Center. I think it's in KZN.
It is.
I just haven't visited it as yet. And I've said at some point she has to visit me. I need to visit her, and we need to speak about the work she's doing so that we can try and scale and replicate and assist where we can. Because there are people building institutions. They may be not getting the support and the branding and the marketing and which would do a lot. So to Queen Ya Ashantewa, I just want to give a shout out. Very quickly for you, how do you define Pan-Africanism to an average person that doesn't know what that is?
I think, and thank you for the shout out to Mama Ya. She's a great sister and friend of us, and we work very closely with the Institute as Ebukhosini Solutions. And you are right. We also have a collective choice. Do we want Pan-African and African-centered institutions? And are you investing one? Are you, and you may not have the money, but you may have time to come and put some brick on a Saturday. That's what it takes. So, but to your question, what is Pan-Africanism? For me, there's two simple ways of explaining it. One is to see all African people and African descended people as your people, and that it means something other than black people. All
must be black.
Yes. All must people of African descent.
Okay.
And I guess we're talking first and foremost, I mean, there are people who may years also have lost the appearance of what we normally call blackness. But I'm talking about...
You're not mixed race.
No, I'm talking about people who look black.
But I'm saying you're specifically not mixed race.
Yes, I'm talking about people...
light-skinned black African.
I'm talking about people who are black African, yes.
No, I hear you, but I'm asking about you specifically.
Yes, I'm saying that.
You're not mixed race?
Yes.
You are light-skinned black African?
Yes.
Okay.
So the point is that you see all people in the different various shades and presentations we come in as your people. But not just as a romantic idea that it's nice to belong to a huge people on this planet, but that also means something in terms of the priorities that you make for yourself. So you're either going to do something to alleviate some of the challenges that we face collectively. You are going to be involved in what you find meaningful, because I can't predict what that should be for you. But it needs to be something that you need to act on, that realization that I'm part of a huge global family that face many similar oppressions. So for me, it's that. It's the realization, and it's also the choice of being part of something practical.
Do we include mixed race? Do we include what South Africans call the colored community?
Yes,
the African descent?
But remember, there's also coloredness that is not necessarily from African origin. There's also Asian. I mean, coloredness is very problematic. Let's not get too much into that conversation. But the majority of people who have been labeled colored in the South African race apartheid definitely belong within the African community in my book. So I'm talking about people of African origin, but there's also a visibility to that. So for me, it's understanding that and making a choice based on that. And some people maybe only get the first part, that it's nice to see African people in, and I gravitate towards their experiences and music and cultural expressions, but I'm not necessarily going to act on it. So for some people, the second part maybe is not what they choose to do. And I think then Pan-Africanism doesn't really work. It doesn't do anything. And that's what I want to... my outlook in life is that everything that I consider African spirituality, I want to sit African spirituality in a chair and say, what can you do for me? And if I can't answer that, if I can't find anything, I understand why people would walk away from it. And if I think it does have a role to play for us as African people, I better then demonstrate how it really can. So you get a view because you have chosen to walk away from it, and I must allow you to do that. But since I think it's important, let me at least demonstrate what it can do. So, and that's a practical a commitment. And I think that's how I see Black love as well. Because for me, Black love is not, sometimes I don't even want to use the word love so much. I want to use honor. I honor my people. I stand before my people. Before I go to bed, I hope that I've spent the day in accordance with the principle that is meaningful to the people I want to continue to serve and that I want to see elevated in this world. And that's the commitment I want to live by. Black love means that to me, to commit to us, to commit to, and that means that there's an element of love, even in those Black people I don't want to see, I don't want to spend time with, I think are horrible people. Not to excuse them and say that I'm not going to hold you to a certain account for what you did and what I don't like, but that I also understand that often, and I'm not saying always, but often, the reason that you overstepped and did something also has to do with more than just your personal choice. There's also something that has happened to us. And again, I'm coming back to how I see how we used to be. Because some people think I am advocating for us to go back. I want us to go forward. But I want us to look back. The Sankofa principle, I want us to look back and understand that the way we appear in this world now is not how we always were. And that should give us an understanding that we can do something that maybe many of us now have lost their faith in.
A lot of us are victims of, or we're prisoners of tradition, even when it no longer serves us. And you're saying, let's go back and visit African spirituality, diets, etc.
Absolutely.
Unpack. And if it is not serving us, we cannot hold on to this thing.
Exactly. And remember, this is one conversation we have had. And I love the way you also said, as a young person in this country, you are tired of being told that you are wrong because you don't observe certain things that people can't even demonstrate why it's important. You just told that, no, as a Zulu man, you must. But if it doesn't make sense, why? And I think that's what young Black people need to do. Ask questions. I must do this for what? What does it do? As a woman, I must do this. But I also learned that this is oppressive and you are only expecting this from me as a woman. Why? And if we can't answer, then at least admit that we are illiterate. And then some of us may still hold on to it and just admitting, and some let go.
Exactly.
But I love so much about our traditions that I think that the role of somebody like myself is to demonstrate and to create spaces where people can get an understanding, a better understanding and an experience.
I want to read this. What's website is this? Stockton University. Giving it a shout out. Sankofa, a Twi word from the Akan tribe of Ghana that loosely translates to go back and get it. Its literal translation comes from the Akan proverb, I don't know what I'm reading here. Sewowere fina wosan kofa a yenkiri, meaning it is not taboo to go back for what you forgot or left behind. Sankofa is a phrase that encourages learning from the past to inform the future, reaching back to move forward, and lifting as we climb. I want to go back to these controversial questions. I asked them to Dr. Uma. I'm going to ask them to you again, and I know some people get upset, but I think it's important. You've said colored people can be Pan-African. I'd like to think mixed race can be Pan-African. I wanted to ask a white European of European descent person, could they ever identify as Pan-African, number one? And number two, can a person of African descent who refuses to, no, not who refuses, who emulates the exact behavior of the traditional European descendant, can they be considered Pan-African?
Okay, so in a way, your question leads to a definition of what are the criteria for you to be regarded as a Pan-African.
Yeah.
And I have opinions about it, but I spend very little time engaging on it. Meaning,
I can understand.
if you come across as somebody who's, in my book, clearly against the whatever the African agenda could be defined as, I'm probably not going to spend much time with you. And I'm also not going to
exception and an outlier.
And I'm not going to allow you to take up much space. I'm not going to sit and make my blog post about how useless Penuel is. Like, he's going to live his own life. And when he sees me doing something that he likes, he's probably going to come to me. I'm going to have to trust that what I do is so good that when Penuel realizes that he's wrong, he's going to have to come and want to have a conversation with me. So my point is that I feel we spend too much time about saying that this one is wrong because he dated a woman in 1972. So we can never listen to that person. We don't know the circumstances. And until I do, yes, I might be skeptical. I might have views, but let it be a personal view then until I meet you and can ask you that question if I feel I have to. So no, white people cannot be Pan-African. And I think at this point, white people, in our journey towards a fuller liberation, I'm trying to not presence white people so much. That is why I also don't talk a lot about white. I think I always want to foreground my conversations with, let's be aware of what kind of power white supremacy is and how it has influenced us and damaged us. But after that, I don't want us to sit and talk about white people. You know what I did? You know what people even do? You know, I feel that's a very defeatist way of also looking at, we're presencing whiteness a lot in conscious conversations sometimes. And when it's not necessary, I want us to talk about, so we need to do what? For me to work on my trauma, this is what I want to do. These are the people I need to spend time with. These are the books I need to read. These are the things I need to learn. These are the skills that are necessary in my life. And doing that means that we're actually building our power. Because if we're not, we are allowing whiteness to kind of be the definition. And then we're going to be like white people. And God forbid, we mustn't be like white people. We must not. We must not. And can black people without or with an anti-African agenda become? No, I don't think they can be considered Pan-African, and I don't think they would want to, because I think if you take that strong a stand away from thinking that Africa is important, African people need to be liberated, you probably also wouldn't speak a language. So now we're coming more into a space of, are you really, like what you are saying, do you really mean it, and things like that. I don't want to spend so much time doing that.
What's the importance of your dress? If you don't mind, maybe you can explain to us what you're wearing, the importance of dress, the importance of looking a certain way, so that people either come towards you or they like, I'm not into that. Okay,
so the reason I present myself this way actually it goes back to Orlando, Soweto. I was reading in my little hostel room a book by Molefi Asante, who's one of the most well-published writers in the Pan-African world and still living. He's an African-American scholar who's also coined and is very linked to the term Afrocentricity because he's written extensively on that. Yeah. And he was a writer that challenged me. I remember reading this book about, how would you feel about, what would be your understanding of a white person who dresses in African garb, has an African name, is more in tune with African languages and adores African music and all of that. What would you think of this person? Wouldn't you think that this person is really running away from their identity and really trying to be something they're not? And he used as an example to say that, but look at us as African people. We dress in their clothes. We love their languages. We love their music. We love to be adored within their cultural frames. Isn't that crazy? And I was thinking, that is actually very true. Yeah. And it led me on a path to say that I just want to be relevant. And I want to make relevant choices. Yeah. So wearing... Well, you could argue what is African clothes and what is traditional, because this is not a costume or a way of dressing that links me directly to a particular history. I think it's more the aesthetics of African fabrics, which is also a problematic and contested space. But what I'm trying to, because European institutions have also taken advantage of that and now have become mass producers of fabrics that we now buy as African.
And the Asians as well.
Exactly. It's the Mushweshwe story over again. But I think for me, it means in my personal life, it's my relevance of choices. I guide myself to make choices, even in the space of aesthetics and things that I have some power over, because there's many things I want to change that I don't have the power over. And how I present myself, what I dress with, I can. But the stereotypical thinking, because many people in South Africa come and say, yo, excuse me, where's your shirt from? Where can I get this? Sure. Yo, it's nice. Where do you get this? It's such expensive.
It's African.
Yeah, you look so African. Like, I like this. And for me, it has never been like I'm trying to be more African or I'm now on a higher level or I'm more relevant than others. It's really about myself and the choices that I make. And at the end of the day, what is the absolute most relevant of this? It's made by another Black person. Yeah. I go to a brother and I say, this is what I want. This is how much can we negotiate the price? And I'm supporting his business. Yeah. And I don't want to support Adidas. I don't want to support brands and people that have no interest in my people's everyday life experiences and challenges. So I want to boost our economy. And this is one thing I can do.
Yeah. I was going to ask a controversial question. I'm scared we might deviate. Molefi Kete Asante. Mm-hmm. He was born Arthur Lee Smith Jr. A slave name. He's an American professor and philosopher. He is a leading figure in the fields of African studies, and communication studies. He is currently a professor in the Department of Africology at Temple University, where he founded the PhD program in African American Studies. He is president of the Molefi Kete Asante Institute for Afrocentric Studies, just to put him on. I was going to ask the controversial question of, because you decided to use the example of Adidas, I thought you were going to go to Nike, but then I started thinking about Kanye West. And what does it mean when you're supporting a Black brother who owns Yeezys? Is that half supporting Black, half supporting German? Anyways, I sat with a lady, very passionate, patriotic South African, Mandisa Mashego. She used to be in politics. She's now a political activist. And the question I asked her was, can Black people govern? We look at the failures of the ANC government since 1994. We look at some of the failures of other African governments who got liberation, were given. Because apparently you need to be given freedom.
Absolutely.
Back then. And the seeming failures, not necessarily on a European standard, but just the people don't look happy. The people don't look at peace. They don't seem to have a strong sense of identity. They still claim to want to assimilate to Europeanism, and that's how we measure wealth and happiness. And can Black people govern? We didn't expand on it. And she said, look, I'm not going to expand on it. We'll do it on another platform. But she said, if you want to figure out if Black people can govern, go back to the Black home.
Sure.
Can the Black person govern his home?
Right.
Once you can answer that question, you'll answer everything else.
Exactly, yeah.
And I'm raising this because I know this is a huge topic for you. Where are we getting it wrong from a family perspective, which then probably also then moves on to society, community, political, business leadership?
I think there's at least three factors. It's how history has treated us and what we have experienced over the years, meaning the breaking of the African family with the tax systems, with the poll system, poll tax, making
what tax?
The poll tax.
Poll.
Yeah, the hut and the poll tax. The taxes that.
Please explain those briefly.
In South African history, white people made it mandatory for people to have to pay tax for where they lived, and also to contribute to an economy in ways that was not taken from their own produce. Like if they produce potatoes, they could not pay, in that way. They had to pay taxes through European money. And that could only be done through working at a mine or working at a European home or a business.
Farm, a factory.
That's right. Sure. And this led to most African men in this country having to spend time, most of the year, outside of the family home, away from his wife, away from his children, and also becoming a quite estranged member of the family, being disrespected in the mine or wherever he was working, and not really feeling so comfortable anymore maybe at home, because I'm trying to envision this in my mind, being treated as an absolute nothing, as a small boy, being called names by the people that I need to work for so that I can go home and say, here's some money we can now buy.
They called us a boy.
Exactly. And as I'm coming in the door, these children haven't seen me in a year. And in my mind, they're going to flock towards me and embrace me. But when I open the door, they run away. Yeah. And I don't even know how to touch my wife, because she's also a bit like, because I'm coming with my roughness, I'm coming with my anger, she also doesn't seem to really be that happy that I'm home, and we don't know what to talk about, and we're sitting there, and it's just I'm actually would be more comfortable if I can just leave tomorrow. Yeah. So I'm not going to stay that week. Go back
to what I'm used to.
Exactly.
Go to the tavern. Exactly. Listen to
You understand? Exactly. And and that story for me illustrates very strongly how the family was broken in a place where we no longer expect men to play a role, and maybe we as men also have found ourselves struggling so much. So the history, but also what we emulate towards, because even in I do a lot of work with African men, and I've learned a lot about myself, but I also learned a lot about us as African men, that our ideals are often shaped by those we are oppressed by, because they seem to hold a certain sense of power. So African leadership very much is leaning towards European ways of leading. And African ways of leading and African values in that space seems weak and they don't work within the Eurocentric business spaces. Yeah. Because, so I think we are confused. So history has marked it in a particular way. The what we emulate towards sets us up. And then I think many of us do not have an experience. I'm thinking back, I have a few experiences of being in an absolutely African-centered, African-led space. One is Suriname, which is a country on top of Brazil. It's kind of part of the Caribbean, but it's part of the subcontinent of South.
Suriname. It's surname with an I somewhere in the
Suriname,
middle.
Suriname. Yeah. It's
South
a Dutch
America.
colony. And there are the people who set themselves free. People say they run away. They set themselves free. We call them what? Maroons.
Close to Guyana.
That's right.
In the state of Amapa.
Yes. There's a whole group of people who freed themselves immediately when they were enslaved and put there to work for white people. And they have retained their culture, they've retained their language. There are certain languages that are alive there that are lost in Ghana, where they actually come from. And in that space, there's a sense of, and it's not that it's unchallenged or everything is beautiful and happy, but there's a sense of order. There's a sense of people knowing where they belong, what they're supposed to do. And when you have grievances, when there's things you don't like, things that you think is a problem that is being ignored, there's a way of how that is being addressed. Effectively. And the way I'm looking at, and even societies that I visit here in South Africa who may have lost certain ingredients of that, that's where I see most of us come from. A sense of order, not a sense of, even when you think of leadership, a lot of our ancient leadership was not just Penuel is the king because everybody likes him. Penuel is the king because it has been decided that it is in his lineage and in his calling that he must be, but he's going to be held accountable. There's going to be a council around him. There's going to be mothers nurturing his softer and more human principles. There's going to be warriors taking care of his warrior tactics and things like that, but he's going to be held accountable. And when he's no longer staying within the framework of what the power that has been given to him is, he's going to be taken out. He cannot just be the king because that's what we do. And we do that a lot now. We say, but he's in charge, he's got the money.
Full stop.
That's it.
No accountability.
You understand?
No putting people aside that are actually going to...
So that's a long way to say, yes, I believe that we can and must, but I think we lead and organize. But I think we are too consumed by the leadership role. I think many of us want to be leaders. It sounds so nice. Everybody's listening to my voice. Everybody's bowing down. Yeah, Buntu, you are great. And that feels very nice to a fractured ego that maybe hasn't even lived for many generations, because I've been that boy, I've been that slave, and I would like to be admired. It would be nice to hear that I'm actually on point and that I'm delivering. But am I ready? And I think many of us are not. And it's going to take a couple of generations for us. And I think that's why I'm part of a family collective as well, where several of us realize that we want a difference for our children. We want to demonstrate a different understanding of who they are and how they should interact with this world in a place that we have some power over. Yes, they're going to be out in schools. Yes, they're going to listen to radio stations. Yes, they're going to learn about Rihanna. They're going to do all these things. But they're also going to learn that Black people are incredible. They're also going to learn that African culture works. They're also going to learn that African spirituality is not something we do just because we did it 1,000 years ago. It's something that informs our journey right now. And I believe that sets us on a path towards change. And I'm very aware of this. Most of the changes I work for, I will not see in my lifetime. But that's okay, because I'm coming from Gavi. I'm coming from Chris Hani. I'm coming from Frans Fanon. And they didn't complete. They didn't follow this liberation to its conclusion. But they made a difference. I have a stronger place to stand because of them. Let me do something that at least and I'm not trying to liken myself to big giants, but I can do something, and I should do it well.
I think you're a big giant. I thought you were going to carry on with the family collective. Or you leave it there?
No, it's like I'm feeling we're at the end of the conversation. We need to wrap up. I don't know why.
No, don't worry about that.
Okay.
So I've got my life is a mess. I want to add on to the part about the broken families. So the first thing is they took the men out with the hard tax and the poll tax to go and work. Then after that, the mom and the children were left alone. And at some point, the men got distracted as well. Number one, they were underpaid, so they could only send so much. And then sometimes they got distracted and started building new families where they were.
Exactly.
So then the women found themselves without having. And then they were given these concepts of woman empowerment. You can stand on your own. Then they were taken out of the home to go and do what the men were doing, to go and work on the farms, the factories, and
exactly.
Then the kids were left alone. And then when the kids were left alone, it was like, we'll take you. Come to our school. We'll train you to be like mommy and daddy. Where to this day, political campaigning is, we will give you jobs. To go and make the money to pay the tax.
Exactly.
But you will leave your home.
True.
You won't be there present for your kids. And we almost find it an oddity that even within South Africa with our issues and inequality and poverty, we've got Indian Muslims where the women are at home with the kids. And the man comes home every day from wherever he's plying his trade. Which is really great. I have a plea to ask your advice on camera, to advise me on my broken family. This is me opening up my own issues, and maybe we can do it as a parting shot, or we can do it now, because I want you to go through the work you're doing. I don't know if we should do the work you're doing first, or if we should do my own pain points.
Maybe let's start there, because I think
with my pain points.
I think it will come through. But maybe I should say just 2 words.
Sure.
So through my journey of learning and orientating myself within the Pan-African world, like I said, from get-go, I've been very adamant about being practical. So whatever I'm presented with, I want to put it down on a chair and say, what can I use you for? Or not use you for, but what can I be inspired to do through this? And coming from a broken family myself, living for many years of my life, thinking that I will probably also never really get an experience of being part of let me call it a wholesome family. And seeing families falling apart all around me and that becoming the norm. I always say this, when you come into a home and you find a 16-year-old with a baby and you realize that this is actually a child, you're not going to expect to see a male next to her, and it's just normal. If she said, "Oh, would you like to meet my partner?" What do you mean your partner? He's here. He's acknowledging that
weird.
you together.
That's
like,
very weird.
Yeah, what happened? Like,
when
I don't know.
See teen moms, on their own.
Exactly. There must be something cultural you were forced. There cannot be that it just happened. Yeah. So we've kind of given up on the Black family as well. And I think the reason why many women speak stronger now, we can have a long discussion about what feminism and women empowerment mean for Black women, but we should agree that many African women speak with a stronger voice than what they were allowed to or forced to not say years ago.
Correct.
And many of them, I mean, depending on who we are as men, many of us have chosen to listen to also what women have tried to teach us for years and take lessons. There might be things we don't agree with. There might be things we don't see. There might be things we haven't experienced because we're not women. But that the African woman can and must also speak for herself.
Correct.
That I feel that as African men, we have over generations lived with the normality that African manhood is just something that erupts. It just comes. It just develops. There's nothing that you need to do to become a man, apart from maybe a couple of weeks in initiation school in some of our cultures. But other than that, you should just know. And if you don't know, don't tell anybody. Just put a performance so that people believe you are one. And that works for many.
Yeah.
But inside of men is this anxiety around, am I really an African man? Should I be strong? If my woman says that I don't want to cook, is that a provocation? Is that something I should now raise my voice for? Should I understand that she's tired? Because I don't know how other men act in this space, because those stories are not available to me.
Yeah.
When a man is divorced, what does he do? How does he deal with his loneliness? Because all I see is that men drink at the bar, and I can see some are drinking way too much.
And sleep with the uncles.
Exactly, but I don't know the story. How did it become that?
Yeah.
So in 2010, I think this idea came to me because everywhere I spoke, men would come up to me and like take me aside and say, Buntu, I just want to ask you a question. Like very hushed and very, and it was the same question: as a man, should I? And with all these women now becoming feminist, and what should I do now? How should I? And I was like, there's a question here that is just too oddly the same in different communities in different countries that I'm invited to speak. So I held back for a long time because I said, I'm not going to give birth to another project where we don't have money, because I have a lot of projects where we don't have the financial capacity to actually do it, but we need to do it anyway. Yeah. So this became another one. I held it out for 2 years, but then I realized we just have to start. And the start of that was Shabaka, which is named after a Black pharaoh in ancient Kemet or Egypt, Shabaka, and the main lesson we take from him is that at a time when civilization was really falling and societies had so many challenges and brokenness, he looked back at his ancestral knowledge and used that to kind of raise the nation up to a very high level. Well, Sankofa, that's from a different period and different area.
But using that
principle. Yes. So it's a practical example of Sankofa.
Neferkare Shabaka or Shabako,
yes,
Egyptian, was the third Kushite pharaoh of the 25th dynasty of Egypt,
meaning black,
who reigned from 705 to 690 BC. The Greek sources call him Sabakon and is mentioned by both Herodotus and Manetho.
That's right.
So it's called Shabaka.
Shabaka Men of Africa. And what that means is that we create spaces for male dialogue. So we have the Black Men's Lokhutla, we have Men on the Mountain, we have Teen Talk for teenage men. And the whole point is that actually many of us, and I'm not saying all, but many of us know what is right. Like very few men would consciously say it's very important that you beat your woman.
Yeah.
That's a very good way of keeping. Some would
Almost
maybe
every man
joke about it. They would maybe say, but some women deserve it. They would say that. But if you ask, no, Spusiso, really tell me, do you think that every man should? And they might say something that's problematic, but for the main part, they will say, try to avoid it. It's not really a good thing. So, but we get away with stuff because we live with Njita culture, where you are expected to know a game how to pick up a woman when you're 14, 15. Yeah. And if you don't, you obviously are gay and you don't want to be gay. So now you're going to do anything to make sure that people don't think you are gay.
Sure.
And these are forms of oppressive layers to our condition that we put on men.
Yeah, kids join gangs and commit
extreme
violence. Yeah.
So to be a black man, you're not going to, at one point in that journey towards trying to become one, you're not going to listen to a voice saying, don't rape, don't treat women bad. I'm not trying to deliberately do that, but women are criticizing me. Women don't want to sleep with me. Women are saying I'm gay because I don't keep harassing them because I want to sleep with them. So what am I supposed to do? And there's very little guidance in that space. And with fathers out of the home, like you said, or spending very little time in the home, because not all fathers are out of the home, like they don't live there, but they may not spend a long time there because they're working long hours, they're working away from the home. So the interaction from the age where it is important for young men to model their understanding of manhood on a man who has reached a certain level of maturity and can use that to guide himself and have conversations. That element is missing for many of us. It was missing for me too. But being able to walk a journey together with many, like I'm talking about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of African men in this country and a few others, asking those questions. So the question of Shabaka is, are you the best African man that you can be? And if not, do you understand why? And are you willing to take accountability for those aspects? Because it might not be all, but those aspects within it that you can actually do something about. Are you willing to do that? And if you are willing to do that, then there should be some results coming from that. So you realize that you can't just hide, well, my father was never around, so that's why I'm angry all the time. Yeah, but your father's not going to come back now. And even if he did, that's not going to solve it. So what are you going to do with your anger? What responsibility do you need to take? You can't just meet partner after partner and say, but one thing you need to know about me is that I get very angry, so don't do anything stupid. No, it's not her problem, it's yours. And you can actually find a resolve for that if you're willing to walk that journey. So that's what it means. Are we willing to do some inner work on ourselves as African men? Even if it takes being called out names, being seen as lower, being seen that we're not fully masculine in the way that this archetype of masculinity is presented to us, which by the way is very colonial. That's what Shabaka Men of Africa really is about.
You guys have social media pages?
Yes, and it's called that, Shabaka Men of Africa.
People can find you if they just go on Google, Shabaka Men of Africa.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There's other work you do. I know you sent me like a small anyana list. Winter School Initiative for Children, the annual Black Education Masterclass series, community lectures. Maybe you can touch on that quickly.
Yes. So Ebukhosini Solutions is first and foremost an African-centered learning institution. We invite people to walk journeys of learning. It's like, that's why I keep emphasizing that it's not just a very strict ideology. You could be interested in understanding what are ancestors and how do I connect with them and why is it important. You can come and join a course for that and maybe you are good. After that, you're fine. You'll disappear and find a way to practice what you now know. Or maybe you don't even like it. That's not for us to decide. Someone else wants to be part of Shabaka because they realize that this is something I've craved for. Someone else say, can you be with my son for a while? He's just all over the place and I don't know how to guide him anymore. So he becomes maybe then somebody we mentor or spend time with. The winter school is, and I want to speak a little bit about this. So we keep complaining about education in this country. We keep before Christmas, I always see black parents say, but they're singing Christmas carols, they're singing all this is such nonsense. Yeah, but you are the one putting them in the school. And for those parents who really feel that the school system is not working for them, there is homeschooling, and I know that homeschooling is seen as a very privileged thing to do, and you need to have money and you need to have income and all of that. And part of that is true. But we could create ways of taking care of our education. And we haven't said, so us moving to a farm and having a collective family that's a solution that we are working on.
That family collective?
Yes. 7
families you
said?
So
these are, for now it's 4 families.
4 families.
4 families.
And you guys have moved to a farm?
We have moved to a farm. We bought a farm together and we are raising our children. Maybe not exactly the same because there's also difference. It's not, like I said, I'm trying to emphasize this point. It doesn't have to be ideological. You and me can exist in many spaces and we don't have to agree on every single thing. But do we believe that black people can do better? Do you believe that we should not just wait for handouts? Then let's go. That's a lot to work on.
Shout out to you and the families, by the way. Shout out to you, your woman, and the other families.
Thank you so much. So the winter school is 1 week in a year. We just say, bring your child, and we will put your child so full of excitement around being. When I say excitement, it's not because it is also emotional. When a black child, 7 years old, who hasn't really thought about, am I a great person? Do I emulate greatness? When my picture appears, other than being cute or handsome or what, am I a representation of anything else? And then you start, and of course, when we deal with children, we explain deep history. We talk about colonialism, we talk about enslavement, apartheid, but in a way that children can understand. We do chants, we have fun, we scream, we shout, we do that, but it's also very serious. They express themselves with art, do all these things. After 1 week, and we sit down with parents and say, do you see any difference in your child? How was it? I never knew that my child had so little confidence in being black, because I'm thinking I'm a great representation of a black woman or a black man, so they should just learn this from me. Yeah. But I never really set the time and said, here are 10 role models. If you ever wondered if there's an African queen, here are 10 of them at a go. And that's just a small fraction of all there was. Sure. And that means so much as a foundational layer as you're starting to navigate in the world. Because by 4, 5, 6, you already know that you're ugly as a black child. Meaning that you can see that when it comes to beauty and handsomeness and all of these things, unless when you get to the stage of sexiness and naked bodies, maybe that's where black people often feature. Yeah. But there is something about your looks that just doesn't represent power and strength. Yeah. And you start to accept that because it's just too hard. And I don't think we give our children tools to question that. Yeah. So I'm just saying that's just as an example. I think it's a small school. We have 30, 40 children. We do it in Soweto. But it's an example of what many parents can do. And you don't have to be a super lecturer in African history. Many of these things, you could even access them online. Yeah. We are working on creating some of the manuals that you could be using as a parent. Yeah. But Penuel, I need to say this, very few of us are interested in doing this work.
Correct. Very
few, alarmingly few.
Well, it's because we're focused on bread and butter. I need to make money.
No.
I've got stress. Again, to your practicality.
Yeah.
What does sending my child to a winter school to learn about Africanism, what does it do
What does it do? Is it going to get a better pay?
We need to find a way to educate them. I had a gentleman here, Dr. Shabaka Men, who was speaking about art and the power of patronage and those things. And many black people, let's speak about black people, but let's say the poor, they don't see the value of investing in things like art, architecture, paint, but this is just paintings. You realize this music, these paintings, these buildings are the reason why those people have a superiority complex. Yeah. You have an inferiority complex because you don't have that in your community.
Exactly.
So getting them to understand that, today some parents that I speak to are starting to understand why their kids must do drama.
Sure.
But acting doesn't have money. No. Exactly. So they don't do drama for acting.
No.
They do drama to learn how to express, to have confidence. Because if you look at the CEOs, the activists, the politicians, they have to perform. And that's all we're teaching your child kind of situation.
No, a very good example. A few weeks ago, I was invited to Mozambique to do young men's camp. Yes. So they were 13 to 17 years of age. And amongst many, many different activities we do, talking about, the role of African men, African culture, African history, we also gave them a task to we were talking about violence. Yeah. And I wanted them to express the feeling of violence, the fear of violence, how violence projects itself in a community. And we said, you can do anything. Write a black dot, draw a gun, just scribble something that you can't even recognize what it is. Anything is allowed. Nothing will be criticized. Yeah. Do you know that they sat down and they were very lively? I mean, we did a lot of chanting. They shouted at the top of their lungs something. These people are good. When they started to draw, they took 2.5 hours just to draw an outline of a jail. And they drew the wall and said, no, it's not good enough. And they erased it, saying, you know what I need to do? No, this wall is going to be like, no, it's not good enough. And they erased it. And the point I'm mentioning this is, for me, what I interpret that to be was like, I have never been asked to draw. And if I have, I cannot draw what I want to draw. It has to look like. Yeah. And the question will be, what is this? That's not how a prison looks. Let me show you. Yeah. And I want to avoid that criticism because now I'm vulnerable. Yeah. Now I'm sitting in a space I don't even know and I have to produce something and you're probably going to criticize me. So before you can, let me correct it. Let me erase my drawing. Yeah. Some didn't finish in 2.5 hours. 12 years old, 13 years old.
I want to raise 2 stories. The first one is we've had an amazing lady here, Miranda Nchangase. She runs an agency, talent agency and an academy. It's called Star Quality. And we spoke about the concept of art. And she mentioned the fact that unlike other disciplines, you actually can't compare art and you can't compete in art because art is expression.
Absolutely.
So the idea that this artwork is better than that one, it's like you're saying their expression of is better. That doesn't make sense.
True.
So I think that's very important for people to understand, especially those kids that this is your expression.
True. But this is also what education in our continent, I would say, in the Pan-African world, because this is not just linked to the continent, but wherever we exist, we have similarities related to that. Correct. I see it, but there I expect it more when I also do work with adults, because it's quite interesting to ask adult men to draw. That's quite interesting. Like, draw, what do you mean? And they get so scared.
Yeah.
Because now
they start looking at the guy
like,
on the
I can't
side.
draw.
Hey, you're very good, Rana.
Exactly.
The second one is Sir Ken Robinson. He's got an amazing TED Talk, and he speaks about how we educate our kids out of confidence later on.
Yes.
The one thing he speaks about is that when children are young, education is body, and then as we get older, we move the education up to the upper half of the body.
True.
And then up to the head, and then up to the brain, and only one side of the brain. Then we're like, oh, you're very smart. And from a young age, where kids used to get in the morning to class and dance and sing and paint, as the years go on, there's no more painting, there's no more colors, it's black and white. And later on, it's like, you want to study history? No, I want to do maths and science. And that's how we educate kids out of creativity and confidence.
Absolutely.
And he tells a story of a young girl in a classroom where the kids were asked to draw. And this little girl, I can assume that she's a white girl. Sir Ken Robinson is white. To what you're saying about the drawing.
Sure.
The girl is drawing, and the teacher comes, and the teacher asks, who are you drawing?
Yeah.
And the girl says, I'm drawing God.
Yeah.
It's like, God. It's like, well, no one's ever seen God. And the girl's like, well, now they're about to see what God looks like. That amount of confidence to do that, I think is something so special. And it's something that, again, it's not a black thing. It's something that so many of us have gotten wrong, to a point where we speak about drawing now with adults, but get adults in a room and be like, everyone's going to get a chance to dance. If you do that with kids, like you.
Yeah.
And
True.
you.
Anytime.
Adults would be like, hey, no, I can't be the next.
So we do that at Shabaka. Maybe not free dance necessarily, but we do exercises that makes you laugh and makes you do something that otherwise you may think of as silly. And of course, for the first 3 minutes, men will resist, say, my back, I need to go and check, I have a phone call. But once they allow themselves to be in, the whole room changes. And my experience, Penuel, is as much as we are known as black men to be silent, to not talk about our emotions, to hide, and to be, once you open up a space that is genuinely non-judgmental. And what we do, the methodology is, maybe me and you are facilitating it, and we have agreed that Penuel is going to share his story and I'm going to share my story. That's just the intro. And we're going to share the most vulnerable part of it. And it's a methodology to showcase to men that, you can see I have abilities to present. You can see that there's strength in me, but I also have vulnerabilities. I also have wounds, and I'm here to lay them down. Men don't want to stop. We have to say, Isipo, thank you for your story, but there are others.
Sure.
So men want to talk. It's not true that men don't want to talk, but we don't want to be judged and laughed at.
Want to talk in safe spaces. And as soon as the space is not safe, one of my favorite TD Jakes sermons is The Enemy is After the Men. And he speaks about the way men communicate compared to women, and how men value feeling safe with their woman. A woman will say, I feel safe with a man physically.
No, sure.
When he's around, a man will say he feels safe with a woman if he can confide in her about sensitive stuff.
That's right.
And a lot of women will take sensitive information, stories that men have shared, and the day they get angry, it's the first thing they go for. And as soon as she does that, the man retreats into a cave. And he calls them cavemen. And they never come out.
Or even making these small microaggressive jokes, saying, but he's always been scared of that, him.
And it's like,
okay, that's where you're coming from.
I'm never going to open up to you again.
Never.
I wanted to ask if adults are allowed to come to your spaces. I asked this intentionally because I know you speak about a winter school where you bring kids 7 years old, and their parents being like, I never got a chance to do that.
Sure.
Can you not have a winter school for us? We also want to be kids and draw, and similar to the Mozambican trip you had with the young boys, and there are grown men who are like, but I'm 45. Why must it only be for the Can we also not have, or can I not come in shadow so that maybe I can take this home as well for my kids?
I think our presence, maybe our projects geared towards the younger audience, because I'm so adamant about these are examples of things we actually can do right now. But we prioritize young people. And when I say young people, I mean 30 and below. But we absolutely have conversations and dialogues and seminars for adults elders as well.
Yeah.
And I think I would say that even because we also have Kandake, which is for women. Kandake, which
it's like Shabaka.
Yes. So my wife, Mama Teburo, and that's actually an honorary title of lineage of queens from ancient Ethiopia or Sudan.
Okay, Kandake of the Sudanese revolution, was that?
That's a new. This is a new group of Kandakes who take inspiration from the ancient Kandake.
21 queens are recorded as sole regent in the kingdom of Ethiopia until the 9th century CE.
That's right.
Okay, Kandake.
Yeah. Yes,
is what it says.
That's how it's written there.
Okay.
So, and I think on both sides of this, Shabaka and Kandake, what the richest engagements we have is when there are young and older men in the same space. And which is quite interesting because you realize also how socialized we are to the young guys. If they talk amongst themselves. And on both sides, you know how there's also a conflict between older men and younger men, because as older men we think that young men are just ridiculous, they are rude, they don't respect us, they don't greet, they do all of those things, but we never take a time to think, what is that behavior? Because did we affirm them? Did we ever give them an impression that, you know what, I see you? Many of them have never been seen by us, so they're uncomfortable when we come into the room. And there's this tension in the room when we start the session. And I can, even me, Penuel, as much as I've done this for years, in that tension, sometimes I also think, can we do it today? Is it going to work today? Is it going to fall apart? Maybe we shouldn't. And my mind wants to go somewhere. I'm like, no, just trust, this works. And we do it and it always works. And what is interesting is, because it has very few guidelines, like don't shout, don't at least not at others. Don't be disrespectful, don't laugh. Like those are the guidelines. Elders, they're sitting at the tip of their chest. Yo, hey, when, yo. Like, you can see that they're just taking in stories that they never had. And as they are now 55, they realize, but I was wrong there. And I thought I could have done that differently. Wow, I understand it's not easy to be a young man. And that younger men also listen to older men expressing the pain of being judged, on them not living with a son who now lives in Durban and they're in Joburg and they don't know how to reach out. And that wound. So it's more than just a stoic father who hates his son. You actually wanted to, and you tried once, but you were told that he's not interested and you didn't know what to do.
Correct.
So my point is that in spaces of men, just like women have, because criticize women all you can, but many women have taken responsibility for the things they have complained about, meaning that they're not listened to, that they're not leaders, that they're not equal pay and all of that. They have taken responsibility to put this on the table. As men, we say, but nobody cares about men with mental problems. Nobody cares about men in poverty. But we don't care about men. We look down as men on other black men who don't earn, who have a mental issue. We look down on them. So we don't care about black men. Black men don't care about black men. And so who are we even calling out? Who are we asking to care more for us when we don't even want to take and I agree it's work, and I agree it's a lot of work at times, to even sit down and have the conversation and find some healing and restoration in each other's mirroring.
Many years ago now, I think, maybe 7, maybe more, I was in the Matadeni township of Newcastle, where I was born. And we were with the family, our neighbors. We were helping a family there. They were slaughtering cows. I'm one of those people that has learned over time that every space is a potential classroom and every person is a potential teacher.
True.
A guy that was drunk out of his mind. These guys that you laugh at like, he's down. Why is he here? We were having a chat in between slaughtering cows and being sent around, etc. Talking about, we need to educate the youth. We need to educate young people. Young people need to learn. And this drunk guy out of his mind is like, why don't you educate old people? Number one, people are like, hey, this guy's being annoying. Because obviously he's not coming with he's coming drunk. Suga. Why ningafundisa okoko? And you're like, this guy's drunk. And someone happened to ask him, why do you say that? And in his drunkenness, he was like, the problem with you guys wanting to educate young people and ignoring old people is that you're going to empower the young people, and then they're going to have to go home to these people with olden ideas, and they're going to fight. You're going to cause fighting. Whereas if you educate the old people, it'll automatically filter down.
True.
I thought that was so wise, and I'll never forget that encounter, because drug addict, criminal, I'm always willing to listen to someone who's like, I mean, guys, I don't agree. And we're like, can we just give him...
Exactly.
This is a child. I'm like, can we give the child a platform?
Absolutely.
I want us to shut down this conversation. The thing that I wanted to ask you, maybe we'll speak about off camera or maybe on another platform.
Okay.
But I'm going to lay it on here because I probably piqued the interest of people that are going to watch this. And then I'm going to give you a chance to close off on whatever you'd like to.
Sure.
The point of absent fathers is one of the deepest problems we have in the Black family and community.
I agree.
And we need to find solutions to it. I'm one of the people that genuinely cares about Black people, but I also care about many, many other races that I feel could become better. I'm a non-racialist. I've been criticized. I used to be pro-Black.
Sure.
I understand the history and I understand where we are, and then I look at my own life. Again, bring it home. I've currently got 6, 7 children from 4 mothers. 4 or 5 mothers. My life. My children were conceived in Johannesburg. Now, I can get judged, and I'll happily take it. I'm building single mother households. I'm contributing to broken families. I'm just another typical Black man. I'm reckless. I'm irresponsible. I'll take all of it. I'll take it. On my side, I'll defend myself where I can. I provide for my kids, unlike the next Black man. I go out of my way to spend time with my kids, unlike the next Black man. I speak openly about my pains and my fears and my mistakes, unlike the next Black man. I'm trying to help other Black men. I've gone to the courts because I'm also dealing with pushback from some of the mothers where I'm trying to see my child. She's denying me. So this becomes a story of, but it's not my fault that I'm not seeing my child. So I'm like a case study of so many different Black men, but I'm here. I'm the building broken homes, single mother households. All my children were conceived in Johannesburg. All the mothers were living, working, studying in Johannesburg when the children were conceived. And the plan was for the children to be in Johannesburg. We're here now. I didn't have a plan to marry them. I have my own reasons why I don't believe in marriage. It's not important for today. But I was planning to, in some way, commit to the mothers. To be like, I'm here whenever you need me. Even if we're not romantically involved, I'll have some sense of responsibility to you. And we'll try and serve each other in some or other way. And then I'll always be here for my children, which is something I stand for even today.
Sure.
Now the mothers, and this is where it becomes sensitive, and again, we won't speak about it here, but the first mother, for example, went to go and teach overseas. The children stayed with me for 8 years. Then later on, she came to ask for the children, and she moved with them to Asia, and now she's with the children in South America. Now that's a unique example of the family is breaking, not because of European and money and a hard tax. It's the mom and her ambitions. But now I'm now an absent father because of that dynamic. The second mother, I've struggled with access to my son. And I've fought openly. I've spoken about it on social media. I've fought in different jurisdictions. Randburg, Pretoria, Newcastle. I've struggled. I've told that story. I've cried in that story, etc. We were in Joburg when we conceived, when my son was born. She's now since moved to KwaZulu-Natal. So I don't have access to my son. Again, no hard tax, no European, but now again, single mother household, lack of a present father. The third mom was in Joburg, worked in Joburg. The first thing she did was she was scared of living with our kids. And she decided to send the kids to her mother, the grandmother. Very normal for Black families. We're sending the kids to go, it's stable, it's whatever. We'll provide, and then we'll visit the kids. We'd visit the kids. I have access to those kids. I have access to these kids as well. I have access. But the issue is the distance, right? She got a job opportunity in Durban, KZN area, and she's now with the kids, which is great because at least they're not just with Ukoko, they're with their mom. But now they're having to travel as if I'm a migrant laborer in Joburg and my kids are in KZN. The same dynamic which was forced onto people. And then the fourth mother, luckily my son is young, had the boy in Joburg. I see him every week. That is one of the greatest dynamics I have currently. But I'm raising these stories, and it's not to ask you here because we're closing, but it's a sensitive spot for me, this thing of absent fathers. And in a situation where I'm saying, look, I'll take all the blame, but my kids were all meant to be in one space and I never left them. I never left Joburg to go overseas. I never left Joburg to go to Cape Town. I never left to go somewhere else for work. I've always been here. I never left. The mothers left. Some of them left because of work. They left because of ambitions. They didn't need to leave because of work. It's not like we're struggling financially. It's just like, I've always had a dream to work overseas, and I'm like, it's your life. You should explore it to its maximum. But there are children involved. Others left for whatever reasons. I don't have access to my child. Others left because of job opportunities, because the kids are somewhere else. We are repeating, and these are me and 4 mothers.
Sure.
It could be one mother. We are repeating the same dynamics of mom and dad are not together, and we've got broken homes. And Penuel, big mouth Penuel on social media's got the exact same story of the black man. And how does he fix that? How does he fix that without answering it here? Because I know it's a loaded
and we're
thing.
not going to answer it right now. But thank you for bringing it up and for sharing the details of it. And I'm in no position to judge or say this is where you went wrong, this is what you should have done. But these are some questions, and maybe for those who may see this part, these are questions that I think is important to ask. What did you learn about your choice of partners over the year? Meaning, because one thing that I appreciate, and I've seen you talk about this in some clips, you always talk very highly of the mothers. You don't want to, and I'm sure you could have chosen to share other stories, but you choose those that are empowering and that puts them in a good light. It's liberating to see a black man bigging up the mothers of his children, even if they have not found the reasons to stay together and maybe be the so-called ideal family. You always talk very highly of your children, and you talk about how important it is for you to be in their lives, whatever platform and means. But I think, and this is, I'm not advising that you should talk about this on social media, because that can also be a problematic space. But if I invited you to Shabaka, what I want you to talk about is, what have you learned about the journey in terms of the partners that you chose? Do you...
Hey, Shabaka.
Yeah, Shabaka is in the house. Because and I'm saying this without knowing any details about how your relationships were formed and what you thought about them at the time. But I realized this because I counsel couples. And I realized that many couples came together on a very shallow foundation.
Correct.
But at the time, they would not have listened to Baba Buntu, who says that, but this is shallow. What do you know? I got, you know what? And list the things, the experiences, what they do. At least I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that. So I'm good. I don't need to have any counseling for this. But then maybe later realized that, I was attracted to her because of this, and I thought that this meant that she will also, and I failed to understand that this. And I think that's useful advice for young men who are in that position now. What are some of the things you should have conversations with your partner about? What are some of the things, because we say, my partner has told me what. But that doesn't mean they're going to do that for 30 years.
100%.
So
people change.
Exactly. So should you, and if that's not okay, should you then enter the relationship saying that, now we need to write a contract, you need to do whatever I say? Because that's oppression.
That's marriage.
And
sorry.
Yeah. So that's marriage.
I take that back.
So, take it back, because I'm very happy to be married. But I also understand that, like I say this all the time, if I met my wife when I was 25, we probably would not have been married anymore. And that's not because I was completely reckless at the time. But I think in my growth as a man, I wasn't ready, and I didn't understand what it means to be loved. Because my understanding of love is that it's transactional. So because I'm rich, now I understand why you love me, because I can take you all over the world. Now I understand. But I never had that. So if you say you love me after a year or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, now it becomes questionable. Are you just saying this? Are you scheming? Are you, because clearly you cannot just love or respect me, who have nothing really to offer. You understand? So I wouldn't have been able to understand that at 25. At 40, I was. So I am advocating that everybody should get married at 40. No, I'm not. But I think maturity and having life experience is very important in the black relationship for most. We are not all the same. We don't come from all exactly the same experiences. And my point about, you said, like, this has nothing to do with the poll tax and the father having to work in a mine. Directly, it doesn't. But we are also results of dynamics that have pushed us, even in our love life, our understanding of what is a romantic relationship, what is a relationship, what is a choice to be married, choice not to be married. They are also very influenced by the journey we have traveled collectively, historically. So when I say that this is systemic, I'm not just saying that's Penuel's excuse. They can say, it's systemic injustice. It's coloniality, so who am I? That's not what I mean. But it's a way to frame a a greater understanding that when I come into a relationship, I also come with certain wounds. I come with certain blisters and traumas that I didn't choose and that were put on me generationally. Correct. So, and this is one conversation. At 40, I was able to have that conversation with my wife. And that's one of the first conversations we had. As subjects of colonial histories, what is our baggage? What is it that we're sitting here with that I actually want to blame you for? That I wish you could be more harmed by than me? And we had those conversations, and we continue to have conversation now on a different level, I could say. But it was a very important point because we had never experienced, we didn't grow up in families that we think, that's the family I want. And very few of us do. 100%. Most of us just know, I just don't want what my parents had or what my auntie has or what my neighbor has. That's what we know the most. So how do we then model relationships that last and that can be, and I think Shabaka is an example of those conversations and those relations. And Kandake, yes. Kandake, yes. For women, yes. And really, the key words, what we are using in those spaces is restoration. Because like I said earlier, most of us as men, we kind of have an understanding of what is right and wrong. It's just that I can get away with certain behaviors. And nobody's going to be shocked if my woman is there with her baby and I'm not around. Like the auntie might send some nasty messages and some people say, you see black men. But I can get away from it. I can go and live somewhere else and I'll be kind of okay. And since I know that, and since nobody really putting pressure on me and I don't have to walk and hang my head in shame most of the time, I think some of us, it's easier to do it. And that's, I'm not trying to frame the black man as always wanting that and not wanting to show up and never trying, because I think, especially this generation of fathers that we see now, I see so many, even out of relationships and out of marriage and not in contact with the mother of their child, really wanting and really trying and really working hard to make it happen. And that's why I'm saying that you now being 35 or 40 or what, having some of those experiences, sitting with a 16, 17, 18-year-old who's hopefully just about to begin that journey can be so instrumental. We need books too. We need documentaries. We need all kinds of things. But having the story live and direct from somebody who's living it and experiencing it can make those. And I think I'll admit this, Shabaka cannot create wonder men. We can reach those men who already have some form of critical thinking. If you don't have any form of critical thinking, if you think you're good, you don't need advice, there's nothing we can really do. We don't have the resources to put you on a forced camp and boot camp you back to man. We don't have that. But if you think that there is something that you could do different or better, and you're willing to be on a journey where you can learn some of that, we can definitely provide that space for you.
I want to add these 2 points and then allow you to close. I do try my best, because I'm aware of the damage, to speak very well of the mothers of my kids. With my kids, at least the ones that are older, I do share a bit of the slightly not nice things about their moms, particularly because I always fear this thing of creating a dynamic that is unreal and that'll end up hurting them later. To be like, please just be careful. Your mom is not perfect. I don't bash, and I don't, your mother is, I'm just like, look, just be careful. Your mom makes mistakes as well. There may be things I don't tell you, but your mom's also hurt me in various ways. It's not just me. I've got baggage. I'm open about it, I think, even on social media platforms, and I will carry on, especially from an educational perspective, because I've seen how some of my stories end up really touching a lot of men. And I've been surprised by the number of women that contact me saying,
absolutely,
the father of my child might be going through what you're going through, or I've never thought of this, and I'd blocked him off, and I realize now the importance of actually, I want to add this part. The same way men have baggage, a lot of women have baggage.
Oh, absolutely.
And one of the reasons men become absent fathers, one of the reasons is because the women have got baggage. They don't know what it's like to have a present father. They think it's normal to be a single mom because that's what they know. Their own mother might be like, but what's this boy doing here?
Exactly.
We're fine, Moss. You know, I've had, again, in some of these situations where a grandmother of the children says things like, but you're the father. What's the problem?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
But these are my kids. Like, yeah, but they with the mom and me. So
nobody
what's
needs
your issue? And you're like, oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
I see where the problem is here. So in doing these things, we're going to have to, when we unpack maybe my story and others, speak about men's baggage and how men can become better. But we must not discount and not entertain the side that the women bring, of where women could be wrong and where they can fix things. And hopefully arm some of these men. While you're broken and fixing yourself, we also need to give you some defense for women that are also want to bring their own thing. Because it's one thing for you to become perfect and then deal with the woman who's whatever, but you're still going to get the fingers pointed at you. But you're not in your kids' lives, but you're divorced. And it's like, oh, I understand. Look, without bashing her, this is actually not mine. Yeah. I'm working on myself. Sure. The problem comes from somewhere else. And
absolutely.
I'm trying to deal with that as well.
No, I agree with that, Penuel. But I think the reason I don't want this to be misunderstood, in front of men or engaging with men, I will focus on what can you do about it. Yeah, but you see, you don't understand her. Yeah, but you don't have control over what she does and how she thinks and who she was hurt by and that she thinks you are cheating, and you don't have control over those thoughts. You can't say stop it. You can say I wish you can stop. I would like you to stop. But beyond that, you can't do much. But you can control how you engage and where you also draw a line and say that I've seen you now consistently do 1, 2, 3, but you do this and say that. I'm confused, and I've let you know 2 or 3 or 4 times. Now I'm drawing a line. If you don't think this is a problem, that's on you. But I think it is, and I don't think I can be in a relationship where this continues. So I'm deciding that I'm going to withdraw myself.
Jeez.
And then of course, so now you're instigating. Now you think you can threaten me. I didn't threaten you. I'm withdrawing because we keep hurting each other. You say I keep saying things to you that you don't agree with. You say that I keep putting the blame on you, instigating things that you don't like. If that's all I do to you, let me remove myself, because I'm doing it with a spirit of thinking that we can open up and solve the problem. That's not how you see it. I can't be one-sided and now I'm going to fix this. Let me leave you in peace. Let me do something. But can we then have a conversation about what do we do with our children? And we need to have this conversation.
A lot of men, when they leave the woman in peace, are pushed to a point where
absolutely
they end up walking away from their kids as well.
And that's where we say that it takes a village to raise a child. And I think it's a very profound statement. I think it's overused, but it's very profound at the same time, because this is where, and this is, I think, the black couple is not supposed to have all these burdens on themselves 100%, alone. 100%. We keep talking about the African marriage and so much rah-rah on the day of the wedding, and everybody's there and it's beautiful and money is wasted. But what happens during the first fight? What happens the time when she packs her bag and actually goes home to her parents? Who's there for you? Who's there to guide you through and not just criticize, say, but when are you do? Who's there to guide us? And I think to some of our young sons and daughters, and when I say sons and daughters, it's not necessarily biologically related, but young people that we have been given an opportunity and a blessing to help and guide and be there with and learn from. We are there with them in those situations. And our primary role is not necessarily to criticize, because we know how tense it can get. We know how real these wounds are. And I think I'm coming back to the question of the colonial history that we live. You mentioned an example of where Ugogo is saying that, but what is your problem? You're a man. You don't have to be, just go. Like, if she's like that, just leave. And it's over and done with.
A magistrate also said that to me, by the way. The child is with the grandmother, so what's the problem?
Exactly.
It blew my mind.
Exactly. But where do we get that lesson from? Then we need to go back to the story of the hut tax, of the poll tax, of apartheid, because we learned something over these years and we got used to something that, strictly speaking, should not be normal. And so there's different views on this. Some people think that we must just accept the way it is. We can't do anything about this, so we just try to be happy, and if we can't, we must just... I think we can do something. And I think we can use African culture. I think we can use our family trees. I think we can use our spiritual practices, our upatla. I think we can do this. But obviously, we're going to do it as we move forward. So it may not be a complete replicate of what we did 1,000 years ago, which would be ridiculous if we even did. But we can learn from that knowledge and use it. So I would say, especially to men, and I agree with you, it's men and women. I think this is what we often do wrong. As men, we say, but you see, the problem with women is, and women say this thing, the problem with men is, we need to find a way to meet. And maybe this can be my closing statement, because with all these conversations about men and women, when are we meeting? So we have an intervention called Black Love, where we meet as black men and black women. I'll just explain the outline, because this is something that everybody could do. Even within their family, you don't have to be a lot of people to do it. We have a conversation just together first, then sisters and brothers go separately. And then we ask each group to come up with, depending on time, 2 or 3 questions that they're burning to know from the other side. And the whole thing is for us to learn to listen to the other side of the gender spectrum. Spectrum. Did I just say spectrum?
You just said spectrum.
I just said spectrum, but let's just erase that.
They've definitely got you. He's gone. Baba Buntu's gone.
So the sisters will send a representative to the brothers and explain those 2 or 3 questions and then go back to their group. Yeah. Then the 2 groups will work on answering them. It's a very interesting dynamic. And the rules of the game is that you can't like hiss and suck your teeth. You can't say things like that. Rather say, no, when the brothers are talking, I don't understand. Why is it like what? Why can't you explain what? Because I'm expecting that you can say that. Yeah. Or I feel that you're not telling the whole story. You can criticize the presentation, but you can't say, you see women. Yeah. You can't say that. And what is very interesting is in the dynamic that happens when men and women then take turns to explain the answers to the question. Yeah. What often happens is that women are asked questions that they can answer very well. And men think, we got them. They cannot answer this. You'll see them struggle. And women come and say, we wear, so the question is, why do women always wear this strange hair and makeup and nails and things like that? None of us like it. Why do you wear it? And they said, since day one, our looks have been criticized. We have been called ugly. We have been like our families before we even started thinking about dating. Yeah. So by the time it's already encoded in us that we are not okay the way we look. So we need to put something on to get attention. And we see it works. Men, you are also not free from this. You are the ones who looks at Beyonce and you don't look at Serena Williams. Yeah. You are the ones. And you tell us very clearly who's pretty and who's not, and who's going to get attention and who has the hope of getting married. So it's a collective problem. And I think this is my urge for us as African people. We need to train ourselves to get into a space of dialoguing and learn from each other. Yeah. I've learned a lot from African women. I hold women in such high esteem because of the intelligence, because of the craftsmanship, because of the way of they have strategies and valuable lesson to teach me as a black man. Yeah. I also hold many African men in high esteem because I've seen the journeys that they've walked. Yeah. I've seen the honesty that they live by, and I see the imperfections that they now can talk about. And that's so valuable. Yeah. So we need to get to a point where, like I said, I don't like the word love, because there's 3,250 love songs about love or R&B songs about love, and they seem to not make any sense. But honor means something to me. Who I honor, I would not disrespect. Who I honor, it matters if they understand me. And I can't just shout, you don't understand. I say, maybe I explained myself wrongly. Maybe I didn't take the trouble to invite you into how I see the world. Yeah. Let me do that because I honor you. I've
heard a couple of people speak about the power of language and how women prefer the word love and men prefer the word respect. Yeah. If a woman comes and tells a man, I love that you did that. I love that you did that. I love, apparently for a lot of men or for most men, it doesn't mean much versus I respect that you've done that. I respect. Whereas if a man goes, I respect that you cooked my meal. It's like, respect that I cook. It's like, I love the way you cook. I love the way you take care of our family. So I understand the power of words. Love versus honor, love versus respect. Thank you so much for the work that you do. Thank you so much to the work that you and your wife do and your family. I hope to learn from the collective and the work that you're doing on the farm. I hope we can get a lot of people to visit the interventions and seminars that you have. I'm hoping that even through this platform, I can try and get a few people to donate. It doesn't have to be money. I know we always think about money. It's resources. Money is meant to buy resources. True. So if you can skip the money and get to we need these books, we need the stationery, we need fuel to get here, we need accommodation here, then we don't need the money. So I hope we can get people to contribute and join you guys and be like, we're actually also doing something similar. Can we collaborate? Can we? From me to you, Dr. Baba Buntu, thank you so much for joining us on the panel show.